Chapter 4002. This life energy far exceeded the divine life pill. The old people in the village were all becoming younger. The wrinkles on their old faces gradually disappeared, and their white hair turned black. Shin Mulin also became more and more energetic. The children's faces were also glowing with health. Moreover, this life energy seemed to contain a kind of good fortune. The potential of everyone in the village was stimulated. Boom. At that moment, there were people constantly breaking through here. Shin Dazhuang directly soared to the perfect war god. He did not stop and was still soaring towards the perfect war god. Shin Xiaojia's cultivation also soared all the way to the warlord. Even those 4 or 5-year-old children also stepped onto the path of cultivation, erupting with terrifying potential. What's going on? Fire Lotus and Mermaid Princess looked at this scene in shock. This is the good fortune that Brother Gufeng bestowed upon us. That's right. It must be related to Brother Gufeng. Even if he died, he did not forget us. His heroic spirit will always exist to protect us and the village. The villagers' faces were covered in tears. Even though he had died, he did not leave. He was using his own way to protect everything here. No. This is indeed related to Feiyang. It's not his heroic spirit that is protecting the village. This is Feiyang's will, Mermaid Princess muttered. Yes. Qin Dage completed the last step here. This village has done him a favor, so he is repaying the people of this village. Fire Lotus nodded. The surrounding mountains and rivers had completely withered. But not only were the people in the village fine, but the nearby beasts were also fine. There was no sign of life force being drawn away. Only the life force of the plants was being drawn away. There were hundreds of villages of various sizes around the Shen family village. Soon, this scene also appeared in these villages. The essence of the plants rose into the air and rushed towards the Shen family village. But other than that, whether it was humans or beasts, they were not affected at all. Of course, the people of other villages could not enjoy the treatment of the Shen family village. What's going on? Many humans and beasts were chasing the life force and flying towards the Shen family village, wanting to find out what was going on. But no matter which direction they came from, when they were 10,000 miles away from the Shen family village, they were stopped by an invisible force and could not move forward. It seems to be the direction of the Shen family village. What happened in the Shen family village? Everyone was surprised. Farther away, there was a city. This was the city that Shin Dazhuang often. At this moment, the essence of the plants around the city was also drawn out and soared into the sky, gathering into a vast amount of life energy. It was like an angry wave, crazily surging in the direction of the Shin family village, shocking everyone in the city. This news quickly spread throughout the Western continent. How? Go check. No. Old Chi, go and investigate this personally. When the Alliance Master of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance received the news, he immediately ordered the Deputy Alliance Master and the Hall Master of the Hall of the Exalted. The two of them immediately left the Rogue Cultivator Alliance and followed the life force all the way to the Shen family village. Thousands of miles away from the Shen family village, countless ferocious beasts and humans gathered. What's the situation? The Hall of the Exalted asked. We don't know. But the source seems to be the Shen family village. Someone said. The two looked up at the Shen family village. With their cultivation, they could see the situation above the Shen family village clearly from 10,000 miles away. Looking at the sea of life above the village, the two immediately got up in shock. But there was no one in the sky. The light rain that Qin Feiyang's body turned into had been completely submerged by the life energy. Even if it was not submerged, they did not know that the light rain was Qin Feiyang's body. However, they felt familiar with the will that filled the sky above the village. Why do I feel a bit like Qin Feiyang? The Hall of the Exalted was surprised. Don't talk nonsense. The vice leader glared at him. It's true. If you don't believe me, feel it carefully, the Hall of the Exalted said. The vice leader's eyelids twitched. He quickly calmed down and felt it carefully. Suddenly, his eyes trembled. This was really Qin Feiyang's aura. What was going on? Let's go and have a look. The vice leader was anxious and rushed toward the Shen family village. However, he was also blocked by Qin Feiyang's will. The vice leader was surprised. The Hall of the Exalted tried to step forward, but could not step into the 10,000 miles range. It was as if the 10,000 miles around the Shen family village had become a forbidden area that could not be set foot. Even they can't get close? The surrounding humans and beasts looked at this scene, and could not help but show a trace of shock. These were the two giants of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance. The most powerful existence in the Western continent could not enter the Shen family village. What was happening in the Shen family village? Don't worry. Looking at the vice leader who was anxious, the Hall of the Exalted comforted him, and then looked down at the people of the Shen family village. Suddenly, his eyes were locked on the backs of Fire Lotus and the Mermaid Princess. But because he could only see their backs, he could not be sure if it was the two of them. Fire Lotus? He called out tentatively. Fire Lotus heard the voice and could not help but be stunned. She turned her head and looked in the direction of the voice. Mermaid Princess and the people in the village also heard the voice of the Hall of the Exalted Leader and turned their heads to look. However, the people of the Shen family village did not have enough cultivation and could not see the situation 10,000 miles away. But Mermaid Princess and Fire Lotus could see it clearly. It was not until this time that they realized that they had attracted so many creatures. These are the two girls. The Hall of the Exalted Leader was refreshed. He had entered the Black Tortoise realm many times. Of course, he knew Fire Lotus and Mermaid Princess. Besides, they were also Qin Feiyang's wife and sister. The vice leader was also very happy and shouted, "What's going on?" Mermaid Princess and Fire Lotus looked at each other and looked at the sky above the village. They turned and cut through the sky and landed on the vice leader and Fire Lotus like lightning. Who are they? Their aura is so strong. And they are both so beautiful. The creatures around looked at the two of them in surprise. Master. Elder Qi. Mermaid Princess looked at the vice leader and Fire Lotus. What? She called the vice leader master? Everyone was stunned. In fact, Mermaid Princess called Qin Feiyang. The vice leader was Qin Feiyang's master. So when Mermaid Princess met the vice leader, she also called him master. Yes. The vice leader nodded and asked anxiously, "What's going on?" "It's a long story." Mermaid Princess sighed and secretly told them about Qin Feiyang's situation in detail. What? Hearing this, the two of them immediately looked up at the sky above the Shen family village. It turned out that all this was because of Qin Feiyang. Did he have to pay such a high price to comprehend the ultimate meaning of the law of life? Is he really not dead? Don't lie to us. The Hall Master of the Hall of the Exalted looked at the two of them with a worried expression. I'm not lying to you, but now we're actually very worried. After all, there has never been a precedent for the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death. No one knows what the result will be. Fire Lotus shook her head. Hearing this, the vice leader and the Hall Master of the Hall of the Exalted looked even more worried. The vice leader sighed and said, "Take me to the village. I want to see his rebirth with my own eyes. Otherwise, I'll be restless if I go back to the Rogue Cultivator Alliance." Can't you go to the village? Mermaid Princess was stunned. We're blocked by this boy's will. The Hall Master of the Hall of the Exalted smiled bitterly. Ha! Mermaid Princess and Fire Lotus looked at each other in surprise. They had been in the village all this time, and did not know about this. Wait a minute. Could it be that even they could not go to the Shen family village now? The two of them hurriedly stepped forward. In the end, they were really blocked by this will. The expressions of the two men froze. The vice leader and the Hall Master's expressions suddenly became interesting. They did not say anything, but even their wife and sister were blocked outside? However, weren't they still in the Shen family village? Why couldn't they go in again after coming out? It seems that the will left by Qin Dage does not have consciousness. He may have expected that it would cause a great sensation, so he left this will to prevent creatures from entering the Shen family village. Fire Lotus secretly said. Yes. Mermaid Princess nodded. In other words, the will left by Qin Feiyang did not recognize who they were. They could stay in the Shen family village before because they had already appeared in the village before Qin Feiyang's will appeared, so they were not excluded. But now, they left the Shen family village and appeared thousands of miles away, so they would naturally be excluded. If the people of the Shen family village left now, it would be the same, because this will protected the entire Shen family village, not a single person. It was simple. Now within thousands of miles of the Shen family village, one could only leave but not enter. What should we do now? Are we just going to stand here and worry? The deputy leader asked. That's the only way. Mermaid Princess smiled bitterly. If she had known, she would not have left the Shen family village. Alas. The Vice Alliance Master sighed and transmitted his voice. Old Qi, tell the Alliance Master and the others not to worry too much. Okay. The Hall Master of the Hall of the Exalted nodded, and took out the Divine Sound Stone. Fire Lotus saw this and quickly said secretly, don't send messages here, go to the Divine Space item. What? The Hall Master of the Exalted was suspicious. There are too many people here. If they know about the situation here, they will definitely spread it out. When the Divine Kingdom knows about it, they will definitely come to make trouble. Maybe at that time, it will affect Qin Dage's rebirth. Fire Lotus secretly said with a serious face. The Hall Master of the Hall of the Exalted heard this and could not help but shudder. If the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom really came to make trouble, the consequences would be unimaginable. Immediately, he entered the Divine Space item. He sent a message to the leader, telling him the details of the Shen family village, and telling him to block the news. Chapter 4003. 1 day, 2 days. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. In half a month, this situation had spread to the entire Western continent. That's right. The current Western continent had become a desolate continent. Except for humans and beasts, all the flowers and trees had withered. Heaven and earth were filled with death aura. With such a big movement, the news couldn't be suppressed at all. The Alliance Master had done his best, but he was powerless. Soon, the news of the Western continent spread to the Eastern continent, Southern continent, and Northern continent. Even the forbidden areas. Countless creatures poured into the Western continent to see what was going on. Among them were Elder Hua, He Zhongtian, and the leaders of the Heavenly Palace. There were also giants like the Feather Emperor, the Blood Ancestor, and the Little Rabbit. When they found out about the situation in the Shen family village, they immediately ordered to do their best to suppress the news. The Mermaid Princess and Fire Lotus were both worried. They thought that this situation wouldn't spread too far, and that they could hide it from the world. However, they didn't expect the situation to develop to this point. Sure enough, finally, this news spread to the battlefield in the land of buried gods. What? Such an abnormality happened in the Western continent? Send someone to investigate. Such a big matter, there must be something strange. Late at night, the core area. Ryuko looked at Jiang Yunshuang and said in a deep voice. Okay. Jiang Yunshuang nodded and was about to turn and leave. But suddenly, Longzi stopped Jiang Yunshuang and said with a frown, let Wang Feng, Jiang Chun, and the others go. They are more familiar with the Sky Cloud realm, and are strong enough to deal with any sudden changes. However, they must change their appearances and let Jiang Chun and the others hide their god race imprints. Okay. Jiang Yunshuang waved his hand and 3 figures appeared. It was the blue-haired youth Wang Feng, Jing Chun, and Jiang Xing. Sure enough, they didn't return to the Divine Kingdom. They had been hiding in Jiang Yunshuang's spatial treasure. With a few words from Jiang Yunshuang, the 3 immediately changed their appearances, hid their identities, and secretly went to the Western continent. At the same time, Qi Xiaoyan and Long Chen also received the news. What's going on now? The 3 of them were puzzled. Teacher, I'll have to trouble you to personally investigate. Qi Xiaoyan looked at the white-bearded old man and asked. Qin, or I'll have to trouble you this time. Long Chen looked at Long Qin and said. The 2 of them immediately set off for the Western continent. The moment they entered the Western continent, both Wang Feng's group and Long Qin's group could not help but feel shocked. Everywhere he passed was filled with a deathly aura, and it was as if he'd arrived at a purgatory of death. What exactly happened? Needless to say, The methods of these people need not be mentioned. Soon they found out that the root of the problem came from a place called the Shun family village, so they all went to the Shun family village. When they rushed over, they discovered that the big shots of the various forces in the Sky Cloud realm, including the Feather Emperor, were all gathered here. Strange. Longqin and Whitebeard didn't hide their identities. They directly appeared beside the Feather Emperor and the others and asked in surprise, "What's going on?" The Feather Emperor and the others frowned as they looked at the two of them. If even the dragons and the Feng people had received the news, then the land of buried gods must have known as well. No. We must be prepared. Girl, quickly send a message to the White-Eyed Wolf and Frenzied. Also, the demon ancestor must come and help us. The Feather Emperor looked at the Mermaid Princess and Fire Lotus. Okay. The two of them nodded. Seeing that no one answered him, Longqin raised his head and scanned the sky above the Shun family village. A trace of surprise gradually appeared in his eyes. Although he didn't see Qin Feiyang, he seemed to sense Qin Feiyang's aura. Could it be that all of this was related to Qin Feiyang? The white-bearded old man and Wang Feng's group, who had disguised themselves and hid in the crowd, also noticed this. They were extremely surprised. Lord Feather Emperor, what's going on? Wang Feng suppressed his cultivation and disguised himself as an old man in his 70s or 80s. He looked at the Feather Emperor and asked, "Nothing." The Feather Emperor shook his head. Hearing this, Wang Feng furrowed his brows subtly. Why would there be such a big commotion if there was nothing? Moreover, all of you are gathered here. Who are you ignoring? Something big must have happened. Wait a minute. Could it be that Qin Feiyang is now at the critical moment of comprehending the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death? All these years, they had been guessing where Qin Feiyang was. They had also been investigating Qin Feiyang's whereabouts. They had also thought about where Qin Feiyang might be hiding and comprehending the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death. So now he couldn't help but think of this point, because the situation was too strange. The essence of the entire Western mainland had been extracted by Qin Feiyang. Apart from the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, he couldn't think of any other reason. Hurry up and inform Ryuko and the Divine Lady, Wang Feng said calmly through voice transmission. Okay. Jiang Chun and the Divine Lady replied and left quietly. But at the same time, Longqin glanced at Wang Feng. A wisp of strange light could be vaguely seen in her eyes. In fact, she had secretly activated her battle soul to eavesdrop on the voice transmission of the Feather Emperor and the others. She didn't expect to hear this conversation. Inform Ryuko and the Divine Lady. In that case, the old man who had asked the Feather Emperor earlier was definitely someone from the Divine Kingdom in disguise. However, she didn't say anything. She glanced at the Feather Emperor and the others before leaving silently. Seeing Longqin leave, the old man with the white beard also turned and left. Obviously, he was going to inform Qi Xiaoyan. Brother, I've already investigated clearly. The situation in the Western mainland is caused by Qin Feiyang. Not far away, in the mountains. Longqin looked at Longchen's shadow and said. Longchen said in realization, so it's this guy. No wonder Lunatic suddenly woke up from his seclusion and left without saying a word. But what is the reason for this? I haven't investigated clearly yet. The Feather Emperor and the others didn't mention the reason when they were secretly communicating. But I think it should be related to the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death. Otherwise, such a big commotion wouldn't have happened. Moreover, the Feather Emperor and the others wouldn't have come here personally. They even let Lunatic come out of seclusion. Longqin's eyes flickered. The ultimate meaning of the law of life and death. Hearing this, Longchen's spirit was lifted. Why do you look so happy? Longqin frowned. One had to know. If Qin Feiyang really comprehended the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, not only would he be a great threat to the Divine Kingdom, but he would also be a great threat to them. Of course I'm happy, because this is what I'm looking forward to. As long as he comprehended the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, we will have the capital to contend with the Divine Kingdom. Longchen smiled. Then aren't you afraid that he will deal with you in the future? Longqin frowned. We'll talk about the future later. Longchen shook his head and smiled. He asked, "Have you discovered anyone from the Divine Kingdom?" "I really have to hand it to you." Longchen glared at Longchen angrily and nodded. "Yes, and they are also notifying Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang at this moment." "What? They're moving so fast?" "Then, have you told Feather Emperor and the others about this?" Longchen was shocked and quickly asked. "No." Longchen shook his head, his face full of displeasure. "You're silly. For this matter, we must help Qin Feiyang unconditionally. Give me the coordinates, and I'll go there right away. You should also go to Feather Emperor and the others and tell them about the Divine Kingdom situation." Longchen had a commanding tone that could not be disobeyed. "Okay. I'll listen to you." Longchen was furious. He gave Longchen the coordinates, put away the Divine Sound Stone, turned around, and flew toward Feather Emperor and the others. At this moment, Lunatic had already arrived in the sky. His terrifying aura made all the creatures present tremble uncontrollably. "Lunatic, we're here." Fire Lotus waved her hand. Lunatic landed beside Fire Lotus and Mermaid Princess, looked up at the sky above the Shen family village and thought, "What's going on?" Qin Dage is at the critical moment of comprehending the ultimate law of life and death. So he needs your help. Fire Lotus transmitted her voice. As expected, Longchen just happened to fly over and secretly heard this, and he immediately felt indignant in his heart. This bastard, what did he do to deserve it? To be able to comprehend the ultimate law of life and death. Lunatic heard this and said angrily, "Why didn't you tell me about such an important matter earlier? At first, we thought that we could control the situation, so we didn't want to disturb you, but we didn't expect it to develop to this point." Mermaid Princess sighed. "What about Brother Wolf?" Lunatic asked. "I've also informed him and the demon ancestor. They will be here soon." Fire Lotus nodded. "That's good. If the people of the Divine Kingdom really come to make trouble, with my strength alone, I really can't deal with them." Lunatic heaved a sigh of relief. As for Feather Emperor, Blood Ancestor, and Little Rabbit, no matter what happened, they couldn't do anything. This was agreed in advance, and now was no exception. Not if, but they will definitely come. At this time, Longchen landed beside them and said secretly, "You eavesdropped on our conversation?" Lunatic raised his eyebrows. "If I didn't eavesdrop, would I have discovered the people of the Divine Kingdom?" Longchen secretly snorted coldly. "What? You've already discovered the people of the Divine Kingdom?" Feather Emperor was surprised. I've already discovered them before. But as for myself, I didn't want to tell you at all, but I had no choice. My big brother is a busybody, right?" Longchen pursed his lips. Yes. Can I thank you and your sister? Hurry up and tell us, where are they?" Lunatic transmitted his voice and scanned the crowd. At this time, Jiangxing and Blood Ancestor had also returned to Wang Feng's side. The three of them mixed in the crowd and were whispering to each other. "It's the three of them." Longchen secretly pointed at the three of them. Lunatic glanced at them intentionally and sneered secretly. "They're courting death." Longchen transmitted his voice. "Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang will definitely come immediately after receiving the news. Let's kill as many as we can before they arrive. This time we're thinking of the same thing." Madman chuckled and transmitted his voice. "Feather Emperor, Blood Ancestor, Big Brother, when I attack later, you must take the living beings here and quickly move to another place so that they don't get hurt by accident." "Okay." The three of them nodded. "Then let's do it." Chapter 4004. Quick. At the same time, the Feather Emperor yelled and rushed to the top of the crowd. As he waved his hand, countless creatures below were immediately restrained by a divine power. Then, the Feather Emperor took these people and flew away without looking back. "Miss Longchen, help everyone." At the same time, after saying this, the Blood Ancestor also rushed to the right. The Little Rabbit used the instant time and went past Wang Feng and the other two, sweeping up all the creatures behind them. Longchen was a bit dissatisfied, but she didn't hesitate and left with hundreds of thousands of creatures. What's going on? At the same time, there were millions of creatures gathered here. Seeing the lunatics suddenly go berserk and the Feather Emperor and the others suddenly sweep them away and escape into the distance, their faces were full of shock. Wang Feng and the other two were the same, because at this moment, only the lunatic, the mermaid princess, Fire Lotus and the three of them were left. The lunatic waved his hand and sent the mermaid princess to the Blood Demon Tower. He instantly turned into a giant and punched at Wang Feng and the other two. Are you crazy? Wang Feng's expression changed. Still pretending? Hurry up and show your true faces. The lunatic sneered. What? The three of them were shocked. How was it possible that he had already discovered their identities? From the beginning to the end, they hadn't revealed any flaws. He must be trying to scare them. What did you say? Why can't we understand? Jiang Chen shouted. The madman's face was full of mockery. His fist was like a giant mountain that shattered the sky as it headed towards the three of them. Damn it. Wang Feng cursed and activated the ultimate power of the law of time, and slashed at the lunatic's fist. Clang. With a loud sound, the longsword formed by the ultimate power of the law of time shattered on the spot. Is this the power of the root of all evil? It's so powerful. Wang Feng's eyes trembled. Boom. Jiang Chen and Jiang Xing looked at each other, and the mark of the god race appeared between their eyebrows. Then, the ultimate profundities of the space-time law and the devouring law instantly appeared and attacked the madman. Even Longqin, who had mastered 3 ultimate profundities of supreme laws, did not dare to clash head-on with the God Clan's mark and 2 ultimate profundities of supreme laws. Because with the support of the God race imprint, the power of the 2 ultimate mysteries had already surpassed the limits of this level. But Madman didn't retreat even half a step. His fist smashed towards the space-time law's ultimate profundity, causing the galaxy to crumble on the spot. The madman was also knocked back. His face was a bit pale, but he sneered and took a step forward. Accompanied by a thunderous boom, he stomped a large hole in the ground. He stabilized his body and threw another punch at the ultimate law of devouring. Rumble. The ultimate profundity of the law of devour also dissipated in the void. Madman was forced back a few steps as a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. After all, both of them had the mark of the god race. Whether it was the law of spacetime's ultimate profundity or the law of devour's ultimate profundity, their power was comparable to his. However, in the eyes of Wang Feng and Jiang Chen, the madman was simply a godlike existence. The power of one punch had actually shattered the ultimate profundity of supreme laws. Furthermore, it was the ultimate profundity enhanced by the God race imprint. The power of the root of all evil was too terrifying. The power of the God race imprint was already heaven-defying, and could raise the profundity of supreme laws by a level. But the power of the root of all evil could not only raise the profundity of supreme laws by a level, but it could also raise the madman's physical body and strength to this level. With this strength, apart from Ryuko's 3,000 incarnations, who else could be the madman's match? Rumble. At the same time, the shockwaves of the 4 people's battle crazily attacked the will left behind by Qin Feiyang. The people of the Shen family village had also sensed the terrifying shockwaves of the battle. Everyone's face was filled with shock. What kind of people were fighting? Who was protecting them? Could it be Gu Feng's heroic soul? Dazhuang little Jia, go and take a look but don't get close. Shen Mulan came back to his senses and hurriedly looked at Shen Dazhuang beside him. Okay. The two nodded and turned toward the battlefield. At the same time, the madman also noticed that the shockwaves of the battle were clashing with Qin Feiyang's will. This caused his brows to furrow involuntarily. The will Qin Feiyang left behind was clearly to protect the Chen family village, and at the same time, to protect himself. Once this will was shattered by the shockwaves of the battle, the consequences would be unimaginable. Although Qin Feiyang's will was very strong, it was still a clash of supreme laws and ultimate profundities. If it continued, this will would definitely be destroyed. Don't worry. At this moment, Longqin returned. With a wave of her hand, a 3-foot-long thin sword appeared. It was as thin as a cicada's wing, and was surrounded by a holy light. This light transformed into 2 pure white wings, like a pair of angel's wings. This was her mid-level dominator weapon. Angel's sword. What are you doing? Don't forget our agreement. Seeing Longqin take out her mid-level dominator weapon, Wang Feng and the others thought that she was going to use it to deal with them. Just you guys? You're not worthy for me to use the angel sword. Longqin smiled contemptuously and looked at the angel sword. Protect the Shen family village. Clang. The divine light of the angelic sword bloomed and turned into a beam of white divine light that swept to the top of the sky. Beams of divine light poured down like a waterfall. In an instant, a 10,000-foot-long enchantment appeared and enveloped the Shen family village below. Qin Feiyang's will was also enveloped in this barrier. However, even if this barrier existed, it couldn't stop the life energy that came from all directions. It directly penetrated the barrier and gathered above the village. This bastard. What kind of monster is he? A mere will can actually ignore the barrier of the angel sword. Longqin muttered. In the blink of an eye, the madman looked at this scene and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He looked back at Longqin and smiled. You're very cute today. As his voice fell, the madman immediately charged toward Wang Feng and the others. He didn't hold back at all. The law of destruction and the law of space and time surged out. With the support of the origin of all evil, the power was even more terrifying. The two ultimate laws charged toward Jiangchen and Jiangxing cute. Longqin was stunned and blushed a little. She was a little embarrassed. Don't just stand there. Quickly kill Wang Feng. The madman shouted. This woman is really easy to satisfy. Just a casual compliment and she's happy. Longqin came back to her senses and glared at the madman. The law of death, the law of time, and the law of karma were activated. At the same time, she stepped on the moment of time and instantly arrived above Wang Feng. Boom. As she waved her hand, the three ultimate laws charged toward Wang Feng with the power to destroy the world. Damn woman. Wang Feng's face sank. Although he also grasped three ultimate profundities, there was only one ultimate profundity of the strongest law. It was simply impossible for him to contend with Longqin. Decisive. A destructive aura rushed out of his body. Anyway, he left his divine soul in the divine kingdom. It didn't matter if he self-destructed. Self-destruct? Do you have no other moves besides self-destructing? The sky pride of the divine kingdom only has this much ability? Longqin sneered. What are you being arrogant for? Wang Feng roared, feeling extremely ashamed. The three ultimate laws were activated. They were the law of time, the law of metal, and the law of earth. You think you're worthy of being called a sky pride with such a temperament? Longqin's face was full of ridicule. A casual sentence had infuriated this person. What a brainless person. Boom. In an instant. When the six ultimate laws met, it was completely unstoppable. Wang Feng's three ultimate laws were annihilated on the spot. Then Longqin's three ultimate laws crashed down. Ah! With a shrill scream, Wang Feng's divine soul was destroyed. Well done. The madman looked at this scene and laughed. Shut up. Hurry up and kill them. Longqin stared at him. You're not cute at all now. The madman shook his head. He had already fought several rounds with Jiang Chen and Wang Feng. Jiang Chen and Wang Feng were already covered in wounds. Although they had the mark of the god race, the mark of all evil was stronger than the mark of the god race. Moreover, in terms of individual strength, the two added together were still inferior to Jiang Yunshuang. Even Jiang Yunshuang wasn't a match for the madman, let alone these two. Go to hell. The madman grinned and stomped down. The two screamed and turned into a pile of mud on the spot. That's too cruel. Longqin muttered. What a waste of time. However, the madman had a look of displeasure. What waste of time? Longqin was taken aback. These people resurrect each time they are killed. If this isn't a waste of time, then what is? The madman pursed his lips. Now that you mention it, it is indeed a waste of time. Longqin nodded. They are, at this time. A cry of surprise sounded. The madman and Longqin turned their heads and looked in the direction of the voice. They saw a man and a woman in the void inside the barrier. This man and woman were Shen Dazhuang and Shen Xiaojia. He seems to be. Shen Dazhuang looked at the giant standing outside in shock and exclaimed, Madman Mo. He is the legendary Madman Mo. What? Shin Xiaojia's eyes trembled as she raised her head to look at the madman in horror. Although he didn't have 3 heads and 6 arms, his body was still huge, just like a giant spirit god. And Longqin. Shen Dazhuang looked at Longqin again, and his breathing became rapid. Why would these 2 legendary figures come to their Shen family village? You are from the Shen family village? The madman bent his waist and lowered his head. He moved closer to the barrier formed by the heavenly god's sword, and sized up the 2 little ants like an elephant. Yes, we are from the Shen family village. Shen Dazhuang replied while trembling with fear. Even though there was a barrier between them and Qin Feiyang's will, they could still feel a great pressure coming from the madman's body. That was a godlike existence. Shin Xiaojia was even more flustered. Facing the madman's oppression, she almost suffocated. Don't be nervous. We won't hurt you. On the contrary, we are here to protect you. The madman bared his teeth and revealed a smile that he thought was very handsome. But he didn't know that this grin in the eyes of Shen Dazhuang and Shin Xiaojia was as scary as a monster. Chapter 4005. You'll scare them like this. Longqin rolled his eyes. Why don't you look at your current size? Even experts of the same realm would be scared, let alone children like Shin Xiaojia and Shin Dazhuang. The madman froze for a moment, and then laughed loudly. His body quickly shrank and returned to his original appearance. Now he looked much more pleasing to the eye, but Shen Dazhuang and Jiang Xiaojia were still very nervous. Because in their eyes, the madman and Longqin were legendary figures, high and unreachable, so there was an instinctive fear in their hearts. Even at this moment, they felt like they were dreaming. They were actually able to see these 2 in person, and they were here to protect them. Protect? This was a bit strange. The Shen family village was just a small place in a remote mountain. Why would such a big shot come to protect them in person? Shua. At this moment, a space-time passage appeared. The madman raised his eyebrows and looked at Shin Dazhuang and Jiang Xiaojia. You 2 go back to the village. What happened here is not suitable for children. Not suitable for children? When Shin Dazhuang and Jiang Xiaojia heard this, the corners of their mouths twitched slightly. He actually said they were children? Although they were indeed very young, they had lived for decades. No matter how you look at it, they couldn't be considered children. They didn't expect the legendary madman Mo to be such a humorous person. However, the 2 didn't dare to disobey the madman and turned to fly back to the village. At the same time, 2 figures walked out of the space-time passage. It was Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang. As soon as the 2 appeared, they looked at the shattered earth below and the tragic aura in the void. An uneasy premonition rose in their hearts. You're only here now? Isn't it a bit late? We didn't even have time to send them off. The madman looked at the 2 with a mocking expression. When Ryuko and Jiang Xiaojia heard this, their faces suddenly sank. But there was also a problem. Not long ago, when Jiang Chun and Jiang Xiaojia sent them a message, they personally said that their whereabouts weren't exposed and they were very safe. But how come in the blink of an eye, the 3 of them had already died? Did the 3 of them expose their identities? Impossible. Facing the madman, how could they expose their identities? I'm really curious. This is a matter of our sky cloud realm. What are you outsiders doing here one after another? Madman looked at the 2 of them mockingly. Their eyes flickered as they looked up at the sky above the Shin family village. Even with their temperament, when they saw the surging life energy above the village, they couldn't help but be shocked. The life energy gathered above the village had already surpassed the laws of life. Furthermore, they had indeed sensed Qin Feiyang's aura. It seemed that his guess was correct. Although he didn't see Qin Feiyang, he was definitely within this enchantment. He was comprehending the ultimate mysteries of the life and death laws, and had even reached the final step. Thinking of this, Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang looked at each other. Boom. Both of their auras erupted. The god race mark on Jiang Yunshuang's forehead glowed with dazzling light. I'll hold them back. You use your 3,000 clones to break the barrier and destroy the village. Jiang Yunshuang secretly instructed Ryuko before activating the ultimate mysteries of the 3 strongest laws, and attacking the madman and Longqin. Haven't I taught you enough lessons before? The madman laughed and once again turned into a giant. Two ultimate mysteries, coupled with his pair of fists, attacked without hesitation. The two collided in an instant. Ryuko's eyes flashed as he took a step towards the enchantment. The 3,000 clones instantly activated. The two ultimate mysteries of the Karma Law and the Destruction Law all appeared. 3,000 clones, that was 6,000 ultimate mysteries. Seeing this scene, Longqing's expression changed. Looking at the madman, he shouted, "His target is the Shun family village." The madman's face also sank. However, Jiang Yunshuang clung to the madman, not letting him escape. Longqing gritted his teeth and stood in front of Ryuko shouting, "Don't even think about it. What's the point of this? I've investigated. You siblings have a blood feud with Qin Feiyang. Why are you risking your lives to protect him? We should be cooperating, but you're courting death." Ryuko's eyes flashed with killing intent. Boom. The 3,000 clones waved their hands, and 6,000 ultimate mysteries immediately attacked Longqing. "I don't want to help them. But there's no other way. Who told me to have such a meddlesome brother?" Longqing whispered, not retreating at all. 3 ultimate mysteries of the 3 strongest laws appeared, and attacked the 6,000 ultimate mysteries like moths to a flame. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they were moths to a flame. 3 ultimate mysteries against 6,000 ultimate mysteries, there was no hope at all. Boom. With a loud bang, the 3 ultimate mysteries were annihilated on the spot. Longqing spat out a mouthful of blood. His ruddy complexion instantly turned deathly white. "Get out of the way." Seeing that Longqing was about to be drowned by the 6,000 ultimate mysteries, a space-time passage appeared in the sky. Accompanied by a furious roar, the white-eyed wolf charged out of the space-time passage. He stepped on momentary time and instantly landed in front of Longqing, pushing Longqing away. "White-eyed wolf." Longqing's expression changed and he shouted, "You're no match for him. Get out of the way." The white-eyed wolf's fighting soul was terrifying, but it needed time. As for the white-eyed wolf's 4 strongest laws, they were meaningless in the face of the 3,000 clones. However, the white-eyed wolf turned a deaf ear and stared at Ryuko, saying in a deep voice, "Who was the one who said that we should get along peacefully? What are you doing? You believe me just because I said so?" Ryuko sneered. "Very well." The white-eyed wolf was so angry that he laughed and looked up. A person stood in front of the space-time passage in the sky. This person was the ancestor fiend. He came with the white-eyed wolf, but he walked behind the white-eyed wolf, so he came out later than the white-eyed wolf. 3,000 clones can't escape the control of the Eye of Despair, the ancestor fiend said. His eyes instantly turned grayish-white. Whether it was Ryuko or the 3,000 clones, they immediately fell into the abyss of despair. Although the 3,000 clones were invincible in front of others, they had a fatal flaw in front of the ancestor fiend. This fatal flaw was that they had an independent consciousness. Having an independent consciousness was actually a very good thing. This was also the strength of the 3,000 clones. If they didn't have an independent consciousness, the 3,000 clones wouldn't be so powerful. Without an independent consciousness, they wouldn't be able to use all kinds of powerful techniques like the original body. But in front of the ancestor fiend, this was a fatal weakness. Because they had an independent consciousness, they would have feelings of despair, and naturally, they wouldn't be able to escape the control of the Eye of Despair. If the ancestor fiend was a puppet that had no consciousness, then the Eye of Despair would be useless. Because a puppet without consciousness wouldn't be able to feel despair. That was why the 3,000 clones' greatest advantage became the biggest flaw in front of the ancestor fiend. As Ryuko and the 3,000 clones were controlled by despair, the 6,000 ultimate mysteries that were attacking the white-eyed wolf immediately dissipated in the void. They had already fallen into the abyss of despair. How could they still control the ultimate mysteries? When Longqing saw this, she couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. But soon after she frowned. Why was she worried about this damned wolf cub? This bastard should be the one who wanted him dead. It was probably because he had saved her previously that she felt some sympathy for him. That was what Longqing was thinking. But the white-eyed wolf wasn't in the mood to care about Longqing's thoughts. When it saw that Ryuko and the 3,000 clones were controlled by the Eye of Despair, it immediately activated the 4 ultimate mysteries of the ultimate laws and charged at Ryuko. I'll take your life while you're down. You didn't expect that you wouldn't succeed, did you? Frenzy sneered as he fought with Jiang Yunshuang. What are you so proud of? The best part is yet to come. Jiang Yunshuang laughed angrily. With a thought, 9 young men and women suddenly appeared out of thin air. They were the other 9 prodigies apart from Wang Feng. These 9 people had already fought with Long Chen, Long Qin, and Li Feng when they first came to the land of buried gods. However, when they faced Long Chen's realm of divinity, the powerful Long Qin, and Li Feng who controlled the true body of the puppet, they all ended up in a rather miserable state. But now, Long Chen wasn't here, and neither was Li Feng. For them, this was a chance to wash away their shame. Go stop the golden-winged wolf king and awaken Ryuko. Jiang Yunshuang shouted. The 9 people immediately activated their ultimate mysteries and charged at the white-eyed wolf. Seeing this, Long Qin immediately rushed to the white-eyed wolf's side and activated his 3 ultimate mysteries. With the power to destroy the world, he charged forward angrily. The white-eyed wolf's 4 ultimate mysteries. Long Qin's 3 ultimate mysteries. These were the ultimate mysteries of the 7 ultimate laws. Such strength could be said to be able to sweep away everything. But the other party? There were 9 of them. Moreover, all 9 of them had grasped 1 ultimate profundity of an ultimate law and 2 ultimate profundities of an ordinary law. Just the number of laws and mysteries alone was enough to crush them. Boom. Accompanied by a loud bang, the ultimate mysteries of the 2 sides collided with a loud bang. A destructive aura erupted, and the ultimate mysteries of the white-eyed wolf and Long Qin were shattered one after another. Blood spurted out of their mouths. Ryuko, wake up. One of them shouted. His voice was like a bell, and it was transmitted into Ryuko's mind. Ryuko immediately jolted awake. He immediately looked up at the demon ancestor in the sky. Facing the demon ancestor again, despair rose in his heart. As long as the Eye of Despair was activated, he would be affected. But he desperately suppressed the despair. Murderous intent surged in his eyes as he roared. You're courting death. Although the 3,000 incarnations were still half awake and half drunk, he did not need the help of the 3,000 incarnations to deal with the demon ancestor. With his own strength, he could easily kill the demon ancestor. The 2 ultimate mysteries of the law of cause and effect, and the law of destruction carried the power to destroy the world. They shattered the heavens and the earth as they charged toward the demon ancestor. The demon ancestor's expression changed. He hurriedly activated the moment of time and rushed toward the white-eyed wolf and Long Qin. He too had mastered the 3 supreme laws. The first was the law of time, the second was the law of death, and the third was the law of devour. And he had already comprehended the ultimate mysteries of these 3 ultimate laws. And now, he could only meet up with the white-eyed wolf and Long Qin, because with his strength, he could not compete with the ultimate mysteries of the 2 ultimate laws. However, just as he rushed toward the white-eyed wolf and Long Qin, the 2 ultimate mysteries turned in the air and chased after them under Ryuko's control. At the same time, the 3,000 incarnations also completely shook off their despair. The 6,000 ultimate mysteries appeared again, and charged toward the white-eyed wolf and the other 2. The 3 of them were in a precarious situation. Chapter 4006. To make matters worse, the 9 paragons attacked again. Each of them had 3 ultimate Tao meanings. 9 of them had 27 ultimate Tao meanings. Bastard, get out of my way! Lunatic roared. Every punch and palm contained lethality that surpassed the ultimate Tao meanings. But at this moment, Jiang Yunshuang was desperately restraining him, making it difficult for him to escape. Even if he could escape, he wouldn't be able to fight against the 3,000 clones. Retreat! The fiend ancestor rushed behind the white-eyed wolf and Long Qin and immediately shouted. We can't retreat. We have to protect the Shen family village. The white-eyed wolf roared. Protecting the Shen family village was equivalent to protecting Qin Feiyang. Once they retreated, the angel sword wouldn't be able to deal with the 3,000 clones. Besides, the sky god sword was a sovereign weapon. It couldn't attack Ryuko and the others. In that case, the fiend ancestor gritted his teeth and looked at Ryuko, the 9 paragons, and the 3,000 clones. The 9 paragons instantly fell into the abyss of despair. They stood in the void and shivered. Their ultimate Tao meanings also dissipated. However, Ryuko and the 3,000 clones were almost crazy. Their eyes had turned red as they desperately suppressed the despair in their hearts. They had to admit that Ryuko's temperament was really terrifying. He could even fight against the eyes of despair. Fall into the abyss of despair for me. The fiend ancestor's eyes of despair were unleashed to the extreme. Drops of blood even dripped down from the corners of his eyes. Boom. Ryuko and the 3,000 clones' minds buzzed. They finally reached their limits and their hearts were drowned in despair. But at this moment, the 6,000 ultimate Tao meanings had arrived. Even though the 6,000 ultimate Tao meanings were also dissipating, it was enough to kill them before it dissipated. The white-eyed wolf didn't retreat. He activated his ultimate Tao meanings and attacked with all his might. But in the face of 6,000 ultimate Tao meanings, his 4 ultimate Tao meanings were just a drop in the bucket. They didn't even cause a single wave, and were directly shattered. How annoying! Longqing cursed angrily. She also activated her 3 ultimate profound meanings. Similarly, it was a hopeless situation. She was not afraid of a bloody battle. However, she was not happy that she was standing with the white-eyed wolf and risking her life with him. The aura of 6,000 ultimate mysteries alone was enough to send the white-eyed wolf and Longqing flying. Their bodies were instantly drenched in blood. Fiend Ancestor, who was standing at the back, was also very unlucky. The 2 of them slammed into him like a meat cushion. Puff! The Fiend Ancestor spat out a mouthful of blood. Following closely, the 3 of them were sent flying like meteorites, crashing into the barrier behind them. They saw stars above their heads and blood gushed out. Although it was slow, everything happened in an instant. More than half of the 6,000 ultimates had dissipated, but they were still charging toward the white-eyed wolf and the other 2. Furthermore, even if most of it had dissipated, it was still enough to kill 3 people. Brother Wolf! Madman roared. He finally got rid of Jiang Yunshuang and rushed toward the 3 people. However, at this moment, it was too late. Seeing that the 6,000 ultimate mysteries were already in front of him, Longqing smiled bitterly. I really didn't expect that I would die with a bastard like you. Do you think I want to die with you? The white-eyed wolf glared fiercely. However, at this moment, a mighty aura erupted in the sky. Following closely, a huge barrier appeared and instantly enveloped the white-eyed wolf, and the other 2 and the 6,000 ultimate mysteries. At this moment, a shocking scene appeared. The 6,000 clones that had almost dissipated immediately disappeared within the barrier. Brother! Longqing had already closed her eyes and waited for death. This sudden scene made her immediately open her eyes. She looked up in surprise and saw a young man in white standing in the sky. Who else could it be but Longqing? And this barrier was God's domain. Why are you only here now? The white-eyed wolf's heart also surged with the joy of surviving a calamity. Then he raised his head and stared at Longqing. Longqing took a step forward and landed in front of the 3 of them. He smiled and said, "Isn't this just right? Good, your sister." The white-eyed wolf coldly snorted and turned to look at Demon Ancestor. He said in a deep voice, "Are you all right?" Demon Ancestor's face was pale and his eyes were full of blood. It was a shocking sight. "I'm fine. But my eye of despair has already reached its limit. I'm afraid I can't help you anymore." Demon Ancestor shook his head. There was a tearing pain in his eyes. There were still some differences between the eye of despair and the eye of heaven. It would take a long time for the eye of heaven to replicate the ultimate mysteries. In other words, it couldn't be replicated instantly. But the eye of despair was different. It could be used instantly. Because of this, when Demon Ancestor opened the eye of despair, he had to bear a huge burden. Especially when encountering someone like Ryuko, the eye of despair couldn't hold on for long. After all, no matter what method it was, there was a limit. "I'm fine. Leave the rest to us." Longqing waved his hand. Fortunately, there was Demon Ancestor. Otherwise, not to mention the white-eyed wolf and Longqing, even Lunatic would have died in the hands of Ryuko and the rest. Yes, your mission has been completed. The white-eyed wolf nodded. Although Demon Ancestor only made a short move, he had irreplaceable contributions. As his voice fell, the white-eyed wolf activated the law of life. A majestic life force emerged. Without waiting for instructions, Longqin and Demon Ancestor began to absorb the life force. The injuries on their bodies instantly healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. On the other side, Ryuko and his 3,000 incarnations had also awakened. Demon Ancestor's Eye of Despair had reached its limit. His feelings of despair naturally collapsed. After waking up, he immediately looked at the white-eyed wolf and the rest. Seeing that the white-eyed wolf and the rest were still alive, he couldn't help but feel a trace of anger. It was such a good opportunity, but he didn't manage to kill the three of them. Longqin. Immediately after, he looked at Longqin, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Didn't we agree to get along peacefully? Longqin looked at Ryuko unkindly. Longqin snorted coldly. We asked him just now. Not only did he not give us an explanation, but he even mocked us. Is that so? Longqin whispered. Ryuko's eyes darkened. He looked at the 9 prodigies and shouted, "Wake up!" The 9 of them quivered as if they had just woken up from a dream. Their bodies were drenched in cold sweat. When they looked at Demon Ancestor again, their eyes were filled with fear. That eye of despair was too terrifying. If it weren't for Ryuko, they would definitely be corpses now. Fortunately, Demon Ancestor had not comprehended the ultimate meaning. Otherwise, with Demon Ancestor's own strength, he would be able to kill them when they were dominated by despair. Jiang Yinshuang, you deal with Longqin. Leave the rest to us. Murderous intent flashed in Ryuko's eyes. He decisively led the 9 prodigies and charged towards Lunatic. When Jiang Yinshuang heard that, he immediately charged towards Longqin. You didn't want me to leave just now. Don't even think about leaving now. Lunatic smiled sinisterly. His huge body was like a fiend god descending to the world as he stomped towards Jiang Yinshuang. White-eyed wolf and the other 2 were out of danger. He could finally fight to his heart's content. At the same time, Longqin also took a step forward. With his god's domain, he charged towards Ryuko and the others. Ryuko didn't dare to fight with Longqin because his god's domain could restrain his 3,000 incarnations. That was why he let Jiang Yinshuang restrain Longqin. That was because Jiang Yinshuang's god's mark could break through God's domain. Last time in the land of buried gods, Jiang Yinshuang relied on his own strength to break through God's domain, causing Longqin to fall into an extremely sorry state. Similarly, Lunatic and Longqin also knew this. Lunatic was facing off against Jiang Yinshuang. The source of all evil was facing off against the god's mark. Lunatic was confident of victory. Longqin was also confident of victory against Ryuko. Therefore, they couldn't let Ryuko and Jiang Yinshuang switch battlefields. Because once they succeeded, they would lose without a doubt. But Ryuko and the others weren't easy to deal with either. They didn't fight with Longqin at all. Instead, they charged towards Jiang Yinshuang at full speed. Is this all you have? You don't even have the guts to fight with me? Longqin frowned. However, Ryuko and the others weren't provoked by these words at all. They rushed in front of Jiang Yinshuang and charged towards Lunatic. Lunatic saw that the situation wasn't good and hurriedly retreated. Then let's have a chaotic battle. Longqin took a step forward and landed beside Lunatic. Ryuko looked at Lunatic and Longqin with flickering eyes. Suddenly, he sent a voice transmission to the 9 prodigies. You guys go and kill Golden-Winged Wolf King. Longqin and the Demon Ancestor, especially the Demon Ancestor, must die. The Demon Ancestor's threat was too great. If the Eye of Despair were to recover, it would be a disaster for them. As for the White-Eyed Wolf and Lunatic's battle souls, although they also had heaven-defying abilities, they needed time. In comparison, they were less of a threat. In a battle like this, the first thing they had to get rid of was the person who posed the greatest threat. Okay. The 9 nodded and immediately killed the White-Eyed Wolf and the other 2. Ryuko and Jiang Yinshuang also immediately attacked. 3,000 incarnations, God race mark, ultimate intense. Such heaven-defying means were used without reservation. Lunatic glanced at the 2, and then looked at Longqin. You won't stab me in the back, right? To this, Longchen rolled his eyes at him and rushed towards Ryuko with his god's domain. Your opponent is me. Jiang Yunshuang shouted coldly. The three ultimate intents of the strongest laws carried an aura that could destroy heaven and earth as they blasted towards the god's domain. Boom. The god's domain collapsed. You also got the wrong opponent. Your opponent should be me. Lunatic laughed. His body and strength were his best weapons. He stepped in front of Longchen and punched towards Jiang Yunshuang's three ultimate intents like a storm. At the same time, Ryuko and the 3,000 incarnations also activated their ultimate intents and charged towards Lunatic. But Longchen's god's domain appeared again and enveloped Ryuko. It forced Ryuko and the 3,000 incarnations to retreat, because they did not dare to enter the god's domain. Once they entered the god's domain, the 3,000 incarnations could no longer be activated. Therefore, the battle between the four of them was quite strange. While avoiding the person who could restrain them, they went to kill the other person, constantly pulling back and forth. For a moment, it was hard to tell who would win. But on the other side of the battlefield, it was a one-sided situation. The demon ancestor could not participate in the battle. Longchen and White-Eyed Wolf's strength, although they could crush any one of the opponents in a one-on-one battle. But now the opponents were 9 people working together. The number of ultimate intents of the strongest was far above them. This made the two of them quite embarrassed. White-Eyed Wolf also wanted to activate his battle soul, but the opponents did not give him the chance. Longchen alone could not stop the 9 of them. If not for White-Eyed Wolf's mastery of the law of life, which allowed him to constantly heal his injuries, they would have been defeated by these 9 people. Chapter 4007. Shen Family Village. Shen Dazhuang and Shen Xiaojia ran back to the village entrance and turned their heads to look at the battlefield. Their eyes were filled with shock. Although they couldn't see the battle scene, the terrifying aura made them tremble uncontrollably. What's going on? Shen Mulan asked. The others in the village were also looking at the two of them. It's Madman Mo and Longchen. Shen Dazhuang said excitedly. What? The villagers were incomparably shocked. It was actually these two terrifying existences. Someone asked. Then who are they fighting with? They told us to hurry back to the village, so we don't know who they are fighting with. However, Madman said that they are protecting our Shen family village. Shen Dazhuang frowned. He couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he thought about it. Protect our Shen family village? When the villagers heard this, they couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. Chua. However, at this moment, 4 figures appeared without any warning. They were Li Feng, Old Poison, Qiao Shui, and Li Zhongsheng. Who is it? The villagers were shocked. Don't be nervous. We are also here to protect your Shen family village. Li Feng said without turning his head, and then he and the other 2 crossed the void and rushed to the battlefield. Their appearance was of course caused by Little Wimp. The people of the Shen family village were unable to see the battlefield that was thousands of miles away. However, Little Wimp, Li Feng, and the others could clearly see the situation of Madman, and the others through the image in the void. So Little Wimp let Li Feng and the other 3 go to help. He seems to be. Suddenly, Shen Dazhuang stared at Li Feng's back and trembled with excitement. Dazhuang, what's wrong with you? A woman looked at Dazhuang with concern. Shen Dazhuang shouted. Auntie, he seems to be the legendary little devil Li Feng. What? He is the little devil Li Feng? The disciple of the great devil blood ancestor? Everyone was dumbstruck. What was going on? Madman Mo, Longchen, Li Feng, they all appeared in their Shen family village, and they were all here to protect them. The most important thing, whether it was the 2 women who claimed to be Gu Feng's wife and sister, or Li Feng's group of 4, they all appeared out of thin air. Little Demon King? Although he was already very far away from the Chen family village, with Li Feng's current cultivation, he could naturally clearly hear the villagers' discussions. This made him rather surprised. When did he get this nickname? This nickname suits you quite well. Old Poison snickered. Li Feng smiled helplessly. He couldn't treat the old man as a little demon just because he was a big demon. In fact, he was very kind. But who would believe that? No one would believe it. During the conversation, the 4 of them arrived in front of the barrier. White-Eyed Wolf and Longqin were seriously injured again. The fiend ancestor had been sent into a spatial divine item by Longqin. If the demon ancestor were to stay outside, he would only become a burden to the two of them. As for the battle between Fengzi and the other three, it had already reached its climax. Their bodies were covered with injuries of varying degrees. Heavenly God Sword, open the barrier. Li Feng scanned the battlefield and suddenly shouted. This voice. Madman and the others immediately turned their heads to look at the barrier. When they saw Li Feng's group, a trace of surprise crawled up their faces. They really came at the right time. But Ryuko and the others' faces changed, because they had all fought with Li Feng before. As Li Feng's voice fell, a crack appeared in the barrier in front of him. Li Feng's aura surged out, blocking the surging battle fluctuations. Then he stepped out of the barrier. Li Zhongxing and the other two followed closely behind. When the four of them left the barrier, the crack quickly healed. Do you think there's no one in my sky cloud realm? His voice was like thunder, his aura soaring into the sky. The four of them charged towards the 9 great prodigies. Li Feng's 3 puppet true bodies appeared, and his ultimate intent was fully activated. Li Zhongxing and the other two also released their own ultimate intent. Although Li Feng had only mastered 2 ultimate intents, the Slaughter Law and the Space-Time Law, he had 3 puppet true bodies. Including himself, that was 4 people. Li Zhongxing and the other two also mastered 2 ultimate intents. One was a Supreme Law ultimate intent, and the other was an ordinary law ultimate intent. In any case, their strength couldn't be underestimated. With the addition of the 4 of them, the White-Eyed Wolf and Longqin's predicament was immediately reversed. Revenge if you have a grudge, the White-Eyed Wolf roared. Revenge if you have a grudge, Longqin also roared in a low voice. They really had a tacit understanding. 7 ultimate intents surged out, and together with Li Feng and the other 3, they charged towards the 9 great prodigies. Damn it. If we had come one step later, the Golden-Winged Wolf King and Longqin would have died without a doubt. The 9 great prodigies roared. Your thinking is naive, but reality is cruel. Now, the ones who will die are you. Li Feng laughed sinisterly. Dozens of ultimate intents shattered the sky, and suppressed the 9 great prodigies. The 9 great prodigies couldn't block it even if they used all their strength. This was because the number of ultimate profound meanings had already shown a crushing advantage. Boom. Accompanied by a loud bang and painful screams, the 9 great prodigies' blood splattered across the sky. And in the end, their bodies were destroyed. This scene made Long Z2 people palpitate with fear and trepidation too. The 9 great prodigies were restraining the White-Eyed Wolf and Longqin. They couldn't even defeat the Frenzied One and Longqin, let alone now. Now it's your turn. Li Feng turned his head to look at Ryuko and Li Feng, and smiled coldly and immediately charged over. Longqin, Li Zhongxing, and Li Feng also followed closely behind. But the White-Eyed Wolf didn't move. He took a deep breath and stared at Ryuko and Li Feng. His eyes were filled with a shocking cold light. This was already the 2nd time. But last time, when the 2 of them went to assassinate the demon ancestor, they knew how to hide it. But this time they were brazen. Did they really think that the Sky Cloud realm was a place where they could behave atrociously? Today, if these 2 were not taught a profound lesson, they would definitely become more arrogant in the future. Roar. Accompanied by an earth-shaking beast roar, a golden beast shadow appeared in the sky. Strip them of their nomological laws. The White-Eyed Wolf said coldly. In this world, a violent wind suddenly blew. Streams of formless energy covered the sky and covered the earth as they surged towards Long Z and Long Z. Not good. Run. Ryuko's face suddenly changed. Where do you think you're going? Li Feng and others rushed over and surrounded the 2. We can't let him strip us of our nomological laws. Directly self-destruct. Jiang Yunshuang roared anxiously. Boom. A destructive aura immediately surged out from their bodies. However, even in the face of the 2's self-destruction, Madman and others didn't shrink back and crazily rushed forward. They certainly wouldn't kill them. They wanted to crush the 2's sea of qi before they self-destructed. This way, they could forcibly cut off the 2's self-destruction. Swish. But at this moment, a space-time passage appeared above the group of people. Two figures drenched in blood ran out in a sorry state from inside. Seeing this, Madman and others' faces changed greatly, because these two people were Yun Xiang and the Master Jura. "What's the matter with you guys?" Li Feng asked. But Yun Xiang didn't explain. He stared at Ryuko and Li Feng and roared, "Don't stop and don't waste time depriving them of their cultivation and nomological laws. Quickly kill them." Madman and Longchen looked at each other. Although they didn't know what was going on, since Yun Xiang said so and was in such a hurry, there must be a reason. Boom. The group of people immediately activated their ultimate mysteries and attacked Ryuko and Li Feng. At this moment, another space-time passage appeared in the sky. Following closely, accompanied by a terrifying aura, a middle-aged man in a purple robe walked out of the space-time passage. This person was about 1.8 meters tall and his body was as straight as a pine tree. His eyes were incomparably sharp and there were strands of white hair on his temples. He was filled with vicissitudes of life. With his hands behind his back and his long hair fluttering in the wind, he was like an emperor descending. Heaven and earth trembled at this moment. It's too late. When Yun Xiang and the Master Jura saw this person descend, their faces suddenly changed and they immediately rushed to the white-eyed wolf's side. "Who is he?" The white-eyed wolf was bewildered. "I don't know, but he's very strong." Yun Xiang and Li Feng shook their heads. However, at the next moment, a surprised cry let them know the identity of this person. "Father!" This was Ryuko's voice. He also stopped self-destructing. Jiang Yunshuang was also surprised. Ryuko's father. Was there a need to ask? He must be the son of the Divine Kingdom's king, the big brother that the princess of the Divine Kingdom mentioned. When Madman and the others heard Ryuko's cry, they were also shocked. The son of the Divine Kingdom's king actually came in person. Moreover, the princess of the Divine Kingdom had long said that her big brother also controlled 3,000 incarnations. Sure enough, the middle-aged man glanced at the battlefield, and his incarnations suddenly appeared in the void behind him. They lined up in a row and their momentum was astonishing. Boom. What was even more terrifying was that these 3,000 incarnations actually activated 6 ultimate mysteries of the strongest laws. That's right. 6 ultimate laws. Not a single one of them was an ordinary law. 3,000 incarnations, 6 ultimate mysteries. That was a total of 18,000 ultimate mysteries of the strongest laws. What kind of scene was this? It was simply shocking. "If you dare to kill my son, I will kill them." The middle-aged man looked at Madman and the others and said. As his voice fell, 18,000 ultimate mysteries of the strongest laws suddenly surged towards the white-eyed wolf and the others like a tide. Before they even got close, that terrifying and monstrous divine power shattered the white-eyed wolf's battle soul. Madman and the others looked at each other and could only stop. Seeing this, the middle-aged man waved his hand, and the 18,000 ultimate mysteries also stopped. However, his aura had been firmly locked onto the white-eyed wolf and the others, causing the white-eyed wolf and the others to break out in cold sweat. "Haha. Continue. Aren't you very powerful? Why don't you dare to make a move? I'm standing here, come on." And the golden-winged wolf king, "Didn't you want to deprive me of my laws? I beg you, hurry up and deprive me." Ryuko immediately clamored and laughed wildly. Madman and the others clenched their hands and silently retreated to the side of the white-eyed wolf and the others. "Look at you, you're like stray dogs." Ryuko sneered. "Too arrogant." Old Poison's face was full of malevolence. "There's no other way, our backer is here. How can we not be arrogant? Moreover, even if we kill them, there's no practical use. Soon, they will come back to harm the Sky Cloud realm. Unless we deprive them of all their cultivation or shatter the divine soul they left behind in the Divine Kingdom." Longchen secretly sighed, glanced at Ryuko, and said indifferently, "Don't act like a clown, it's ugly." Chapter 4008. I'm a clown. When Ryuko heard this, he was furious. 3,000 incarnations appeared behind him. An ultimate mystery soared into the sky, emitting monstrous divine power. Everyone's face suddenly sank. Both father and son had 3,000 incarnations. How could they play? They couldn't let Longchen deal with the father and son alone. No matter how heaven-defying the god's domain was, there was still a limit. The middle-aged man looked down at Ryuko and said lightly, "They're right. Don't do such a thing again. It's beneath the demeanor of the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan." "But father, Ryuko looked aggrieved. How could he be reprimanded in front of outsiders? "Yunxiang Shura, what's going on?" Frenzy asked telepathically. "When I heard the news here, I also planned to come and help, but I suddenly thought that this matter might alarm the older generation of the Divine Kingdom. So I contacted senior brother, and asked him to accompany me to guard the core area, and stop the older generation of the Divine Kingdom. But I didn't expect that this person would come. I've never seen the ultimate mysteries of the 6 strongest laws. Even if we joined forces, we couldn't defeat him. At that time, he hadn't even activated 3,000 incarnations. So senior brother and I immediately came to inform you. I asked you to quickly get rid of Ryuko and Jiang Yinshuang, because I was worried about this situation." Yin Xiang said secretly. "Then what should we do now?" Longqin asked secretly. "Now we can only delay. And none of us know if the people of the Divine Kingdom will come to the Sky Cloud Realm later." Longqin said secretly. He looked up at the middle-aged man and cupped his hands. "May I know Senior's name?" "Heavenly Lord Ji." The middle-aged man said. "Heavenly Lord Ji," Longqin murmured and frowned. "Senior, we have always had an agreement that the older generation won't interfere. Even your father, the king of the Divine Kingdom, made a blood oath. Now you're doing this. I really don't know what you mean." "I do not deny this agreement. But you should also know that my father personally invited Qin Feiyang to join our Divine Kingdom, but he didn't agree." Heavenly Lord Ji said coldly. "We know about this." Longqin nodded and said, "But this invitation is indeed a bit too much for Qin Feiyang. We didn't force you, did we? However, since it cannot be used by the Divine Kingdom, it naturally cannot be allowed to live in this world." Heavenly Lord Ji said. The white-eyed wolf sneered. "You've been talking for so long because you're afraid that little Qinzi will be able to comprehend the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, and pose a threat to the Divine Kingdom." Heavenly Lord Ji glanced at the white-eyed wolf before looking up at the sky above the Shen family village. A cold glint flashed in his eyes as he said, "His achievements today are mostly due to the purple gold divine dragon race." "What?" Hearing this, the white-eyed wolf's face immediately became dull. Little Qinzi's achievements today are entirely due to his own efforts. What does it have to do with the purple gold divine dragon race? You really know how to flatter yourself. Heavenly Lord Ji looked at the white-eyed wolf's unconvinced face and said lightly, "If he didn't have the bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragon race, and if he didn't have the purple gold divine dragon race's secret technique of the 3,000 incarnations, how could he have survived until now? How could he have such a talent?" "Yes. You're an elder. Whatever you say is right." The white-eyed wolf nodded with a sneer on his face, but the meaning behind his words was quite obvious. Everyone present could understand it. "You're an elder, but you came here to bully us juniors. Do you have any shame? What's the point of such a childish trick like talking nonsense?" Heavenly Lord Ji looked at the white-eyed wolf mockingly. "Looking at your shameless behavior, it's indeed not very interesting." The white-eyed wolf retorted. "You're courting death." Ryuko flew into a rage. How dare he humiliate his own father? The 6,000 ultimate mysteries above the 3,000 incarnations instantly shattered the void and the earth and attacked the white-eyed wolf. Longqin took a step forward. The god's domain enveloped this area. When the 6,000 ultimate mysteries entered the god's domain, they immediately began to dissipate slowly. "This is the god's domain." Heavenly Lord Ji sized up the god's domain. There was a hint of shock hidden under his calm expression. It was indeed the nemesis of the 3,000 incarnations. Soon, the 6,000 ultimate mysteries all dissipated, leaving no trace behind. Seeing this, Ryuko stared at Longqin as if he wanted to eat him. "You should feel lucky. If your divine soul hadn't been in the Divine Kingdom, you would have become a dead soul in my hands." Longqin looked at Ryuko indifferently. Ryuko immediately felt ashamed and angry. He clenched his fists tightly, making cracking sounds. But Longqin ignored him and looked at Heavenly Lord Ji. So, you're going to do it? That's right. Heavenly Lord Ji nodded. Long Chen's heart sank. Aren't you afraid that your father will be killed by the blood oath? Blood oath, Heavenly Lord Ji murmured and looked at Long Chen with a hint of mockery in his eyes. Do you know why my father didn't come in person? What do you mean? Long Chen was surprised. The eyelids of Frenzy and the others also twitched. They had an ominous feeling in their hearts. The blood oath is indeed terrifying. Even a sovereign divine weapon can't resist it. But, speaking of this, Heavenly Lord Ji sneered and continued, the power of the divine kingdom isn't something you can imagine. We don't have the ability to resist the blood oath, but someone can. What? When Long Chen and the others heard this, their eyes immediately trembled. There was someone in the divine kingdom who could resist the blood oath? Frenzy suddenly thought of something and secretly wondered. Could it be the sovereign of the divine kingdom? Ice Dragon and Small Beast had said that the divine kingdom was an independent world. There was an even stronger existence behind the king. This existence was the master of the divine kingdom, which was equivalent to Qin Feiyang's position in the Black Tortoise world. If this sovereign really has the strength to resist the blood oath, then this time Qin Feiyang is afraid. Long Chen couldn't help but turn his head and look at the sky above the Shen family village. His face was full of worry. Although Long Chen didn't finish his words, Frenzy and the others knew what he was going to say. If the king's blood oath was really forcefully broken, then the divine kingdom would definitely try their best to prevent Qin Feiyang from being reborn. In other words, they would face an even more difficult battle. Feather Emperor Shuezu, big brother, can you hear me? Immediately evacuate the creatures of the western continent. Suddenly, Frenzy raised his head and roared. His voice was like a bell that resounded in all directions. In the distance, Feather Emperor, and Little Rabbit each stood on the peak of a giant mountain and sealed off the fluctuations of the battle. Because if they didn't seal off the fluctuations here, with the strength of Frenzy and the others, more than half of the western continent would be destroyed. And now, hearing Frenzy's roar, their faces suddenly sank. Was he going to turn the western continent into a battlefield? It seemed that this battle had exceeded their expectations. Without any hesitation, the three immediately ordered the reclusive old antiques of the various races to come to the western continent to help. At the same time, Long Chen and the others heard Frenzy's roar and saw his determination. They took a deep breath and immediately prepared to fight to the death. Heavenly Lord Ji saw all of this. In the past, when he heard his father praise the young people of the Sky Cloud realm, he didn't think much of it. But now it seemed that they were all rare talents. Even in the face of death, they were fearless. How good would it be if these young people were from the divine kingdom? With this kind of fearless spirit, they would definitely become the overlords of this world in the future. But unfortunately, they were born in the Sky Cloud realm and became a threat to the divine kingdom. Since they were a threat, they naturally had to be erased. Especially Long Chen, Frenzy, White-Eyed Wolf, and Qin Feiyang. They absolutely couldn't be allowed to continue growing. Suddenly, the 18,000 ultimate profundities of ultimate laws suspended in the air before them erupted with world-destroying divine might and attacked the madman's group. I hope it's not too late to evacuate, Long Chen whispered. The next moment, a monstrous battle intent erupted from his body as his god's domain enveloped the area. Roar. White-Eyed Wolf activated his battle soul. Frenzy activated his blood eye. They didn't dare to hold back at all. Humph. Heaven Lord Ji sensed that his body was petrifying. The power of laws surged out and collided with the power of the Frenzy's blood eye and the White-Eyed Wolf's battle soul. 6 ultimate laws that had reached the ultimate level. One could imagine how powerful they were. The blood eye couldn't petrify him. The White-Eyed Wolf's battle soul couldn't deprive Heaven Lord Ji of his cultivation. You guys are really overestimating yourselves. You actually want to compete with Father? Ryuko sneered. Boom. 18,000 ultimate mysteries, accompanied by an earth-shaking explosion, slammed into the godly domain. The godly domain immediately began to distort, and cracks began to appear. The terrifying fluctuations made Frenzy and the others' blood boil. As the owner of the god's domain, Long Chen suffered a fatal injury. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his face was pale. But he didn't retreat. His eyes were filled with determination. Although the distorted god's domain was still shattering, the shattering speed had slowed down. "Brother, can you do it?" Long Qin asked. "Believe me, I can definitely do it." Long Qin took a step forward, charging at Heavenly Lord Ji. "Brother, what are you doing?" Long Qin roared in shock and anger. But Long Qin turned a deaf ear and took another step. Just as he was about to be drowned by the 18,000 ultimate laws, the god's domain enveloped Heaven Lord Ji. In an instant, the god's domain displayed heaven-defying divine power. Heaven Lord Ji's 3,000 clones immediately dissipated in the void. This was because the god's domain's ability was to nullify divine arts. Therefore, as long as Heaven Lord Ji was enveloped by the god's domain, the 3,000 clones would naturally be nullified. And as the 3,000 clones dissipated, the 18,000 ultimate laws also dissipated in front of Long Qin and turned into nothingness. This scene made Long Qin, Frenzy, and the others break out in cold sweat. If they were a step later, Long Qin would definitely be drowned by the 18,000 ultimate laws. At that time, even a deity wouldn't be able to save him. What a risky move. Immortal God of War will continue to be updated in the hand fighting bar. There are no advertisements on the website. Please bookmark and recommend the hand fighting bar. Chapter 4009. What are you waiting for? Go. Long Qin shouted. Frenzy and the others trembled as they activated their ultimate intents and charged towards Heavenly Lord Ji. Heavenly Lord Ji frowned. He activated 3,000 clones again, but he couldn't activate them. He tried to activate his ultimate intents again, but he couldn't activate them either. This god's domain is indeed terrifying. Heavenly Lord Ji whispered. Being enveloped by this god's domain, no matter how heaven-defying a technique or how powerful a law was, it was all meaningless. If it was someone else, they would only die once they entered the god's domain, because they wouldn't be able to use any means. But how could it be so easy to kill him? He took a step back. Moreover, he activated the moment of time, and his speed was extremely fast. That's right. He wanted to leave the god's domain. As long as he left the god's domain, all his problems would be solved. Possible. He had underestimated Long Qin. Because in his opinion, Long Qin was only a junior. And he had mastered 6 ultimate intents, so he was naturally a bit arrogant. He might not even consider Long Qin as an opponent, so of course he didn't care about him. But he didn't know. If he really thought so, then he would have made a fatal mistake. Although Long Qin was a junior and his ultimate intents weren't as good as his, Long Qin's battle awareness and means were stronger than those of the older generation. He finally seized the opportunity to trap Heavenly Lord Ji in the god's domain, so how could he let Heavenly Lord Ji leave so easily? He took a step forward and also used the moment of time, but his speed wasn't slower than Heavenly Lord Ji's. No matter how Heavenly Lord Ji retreated, he was still inside the god's domain. The ultimate intents of White-Eyed Wolf and the others had already reached Heavenly Lord Ji. Seems like I was a bit careless. Heavenly Lord Ji whispered. Facing this group of young people, he had to treat them like he was facing experts of the same level. Boom. The ultimate intents bombarded, and Heavenly Lord Ji's body was torn apart. Dragon blood dyed the sky red. Father. Uncle. Outside the god's domain, Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang's expressions changed. Boom. Without hesitation, Jiang Yunshuang unleashed the power of his god race imprint. What do you want? The madman roared, and the power of the origin of all evil surged out like a bloody wave. Before Jiang Yunshuang could even get close to the god's domain, he was sent flying by the origin of all evil's power. Lunatic. Jiang Yunshuang was furious. As soon as he activated his Eye of Life, his injuries began to heal. Previously, she was able to restrain Madman because of this Eye of Life. Although the Eye of Life had yet to evolve, the Eye of Life was different from the other strongest fighting souls. The Eye of Life was used to heal injuries. Although it wasn't as effective as the complete Eye of Life, it still had a very strong recovery ability. Don't call me father. Madman snorted and stared at the place where the ultimate profound was. In the face of such an attack, he should be dead. Although it was possible that Heavenly Lord Ji had left his divine soul in the divine kingdom, As long as he could kill Heavenly Lord Ji, he could temporarily resolve the current crisis. Boom. However, suddenly, a terrifying aura burst out from his body. Whoosh! Before Madman and the others could react, a figure flashed out of the god's domain. Oh no! Long Chen's expression changed. Not only was Heavenly Lord Ji not dead, he didn't even have any injuries on his body. What happened? Looking at Heavenly Lord Ji, who was already standing outside the god's domain, Madman and the others were confused. He was actually unharmed? What kind of joke was this? Did he think that their ultimate profound was fake? But the truth was right in front of them. Heavenly Lord Ji stood outside, and there was not a single wound on his body. Look at his glabella. Suddenly, White-Eyed Wolf's pupils constricted. Everyone immediately looked at the space between Heavenly Lord Ji's eyebrows, and saw that there was a purple gold divine dragon mark there. It looks familiar. It seems to be. Madman murmured and suddenly looked at Ryuko. That's right. Last time in the Land of Buried Gods, when he fought with Ryuko, he also saw a similar mark on his glabella. At that time, when Ryuko was seriously injured, he activated this mark and erupted with a terrifying life energy, instantly healing his injuries. That's right. It's exactly the same. Li Feng also nodded. He was also present at that time, and was very surprised. However, before this, they all thought that this was Ryuko's personal means. For example, Madman's all-evil mark was only one in the world. But they never thought that Heavenly Lord Ji also had this mark. It seemed that it should be the same as the mark of the god race. All the members of the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan had this mark. Boom. Suddenly, waves of terrifying power erupted, waking up Long Chun and the others. They immediately looked up and saw that Heavenly Lord Ji had once again activated his 3,000 avatars. 18,000 ultimate profound of the ultimate profound of the ultimate profound rushed towards the god's domain like a torrent. At the same time, with the help of the Eye of Life, Jiang Yunshuang's injuries had mostly healed. She and Ryuko looked at each other and charged towards the barrier at the same time. Not good. You guys go and stop him. Longchen shouted. How? I can stop Jiang Yunshuang, but I can't stop Ryuko's 3,000 avatars. Madman roared. We have to stop him even if we can't. The hope of the Sky Cloud realm is all on Qin Fei Yang. Nothing can happen to him. Long Chen shouted angrily. Madman gritted his teeth and turned to look at the White-Eyed Wolf and the others, roaring, Let's go! Except for Long Chen, everyone immediately rushed out of the god's domain and charged towards Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang. Boom! The moment they left the god's domain, the 18,000 ultimate profound of the ultimate profound blasted into the god's domain. The god's domain twisted again, and cracks continued to appear. No, this has exceeded the limit of the god's domain. And compared to before, it seems to contain a faint will. But this isn't Heavenly Lord Ji's will, it seems to be. Long Chen suddenly looked up at the sky and exclaimed, The will of heaven and earth. That's right. This is the will of heaven and earth. It can also be called the will of the heavenly Tao. Heavenly Lord Ji nodded. The will of the heavenly Tao. Long Chen's eyes trembled. How could this be possible? All living beings in the world, no matter who they are, as long as they master the ultimate profound of the 6 supreme laws, they will be blessed by heaven and earth and will descend upon them. As long as you fuse with this will, the power of the ultimate profound will multiply. In other words, my 18,000 ultimates have already surpassed the power of the ultimates themselves. You can also understand it this way. These 18,000 ultimate profound have been blessed by the source of all evil, or the mark of the god race. But for you these are still too far away. Of course, you won't have the chance to fuse with the will of the heavenly Tao, because you will die now. Heavenly Lord Ji shook his head. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying will burst out. Long Chen suddenly felt as if he was standing under the foot of the heavenly Tao, and was as small as an ant. As the will of the heavenly Tao fully erupted, the 18,000 ultimate profound also erupted with an even more terrifying divine power, shattering the god's domain on the spot. It was like a withered tree, unable to withstand a single blow. Puff! Long Chen spat out a mouthful of blood and flew out like a meteorite. The 18,000 ultimate profound aura roared and instantly turned Long Chun into a bloody man. How is this possible? White-Eyed Wolf and the others heard the commotion and turned to look. They were instantly shocked. Brother! Long Qin immediately flew toward Long Chun. Don't come over. Don't bother about Qin Feiyang anymore. Run away immediately. Long Chun shouted. 18,000 ultimate profound of the supreme laws. It even contained the will of the heavenly Tao. As Heavenly Lord Ji said, the power of these ultimate profound was on par with the lunatic's origin of all evil and Jiang Yunshuang's God's mark. This had far exceeded their limits. If they didn't run, they would die. Therefore, instead of dying here, it was better to run away. At least there was still hope in the future. However, Long Qin didn't run away. Tears flowed from his eyes. If they were to die, they would die together. Lunatic and the others were silent for a while, then smiled at each other and continued to attack Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang. Yes, they didn't choose to run away. Even if they died, they would fight to the end. This group of little guys. The more I look at them, the more I admire them. But unfortunately, they are not from the Divine Kingdom. Heavenly Lord Ji shook his head and sighed. His face was full of regret. Whoosh! Long Qin landed in front of Long Chun. What are you doing? I told you to go, didn't you hear me? Long Chun shouted angrily. I'm not going. Long Qin shook his head. He stood in front of Long Chun and faced the 18,000 ultimate profound without fear. Long Chun waved his hand, and the Heavenly God Sword appeared. Then he pushed Long Qin away and shouted, Heavenly God Sword, take her and Lunatic and escape immediately. Although the Heavenly God Sword was a mid-level sovereign weapon, it didn't have the power to resist so many ultimate profound. Not to mention that these ultimate profound contained the will of the Heavenly Tao. But the Heavenly God Sword didn't leave. You won't listen to me? I'm doing this for your own good. I beg you, leave quickly. Long Chun roared. The Dragon God asked me to protect you. If anything happens to you, I won't be able to escape responsibility. So I might as well die with you. The Heavenly God Sword said. Long Chun looked helplessly at the Heavenly God Sword and Long Qin, then turned to look at the lunatic and the others. This group of people also stood in front of the barrier. Facing Ryuko's 6,000 ultimate profound, they didn't retreat a single step. I'm very lucky to know you. If there's an afterlife, let's not be enemies anymore. Long Chun smiled. It seems like we're not enemies now. White-Eyed Wolf grinned. Lunatic grinned. Now that things have come to this, can we write off our previous grudges? Are you asking for my forgiveness? Long Chun asked with a smile. You're already a person who's about to die. What face can't you put down? Yes. I'm begging you. Lunatic nodded. Haha. Fine, from now on our grudges are written off. In the next life, we'll fight side by side again. Long Chun raised his head and smiled. He activated his ultimate profound and charged toward the 18,000 ultimate profound. The Heavenly God Sword and Long Qin followed closely behind. Let's meet again in the next life. The lunatic, White-Eyed Wolf, Li Feng, Master Jura, Yun Xiang, and Li Zhongxing looked at each other. They also laughed and charged toward Ryuko's 6,000 ultimate profound. Chapter 40:10. The Black Tortoise Realm. Led by Little Wimp, Kuo Wu and the others looked at the scene in the sky with sorrow in their eyes. Inside the Blood Demon Tower, the Mermaid Princess and Fire Lotus stood next to each other, holding each other's hands as they looked at the scene outside and cried silently. But at the same time, there was a smile in their teary eyes. If Mad Scientist died, the Blood Demon Tower wouldn't be able to survive. If the Blood Demon Tower couldn't survive, they would die too. But to be able to walk all the way to this day, to be able to die together with everyone, was actually a happy thing. Whoosh! Boom! At this moment, the wind howled in the sky and the dark clouds rolled. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the dark clouds and rain poured down. It was as if even the sky was crying. However, no one noticed that at this moment, there was a snow python shuttling through the dark clouds, heading straight for the battlefield. A young man in black was lying on the back of the snow python with a green foxtail in his mouth. His eyes were half open and he looked extremely tired. In the blink of an eye, on the battlefield below, Tens of thousands of ultimates covered the sky, and the terrifying power shook the entire western continent. The creatures that were retreating felt this energy and couldn't help but turn around and look in the direction of the Shen family village. What are you looking at? Let's go. The reclusive antiques of the various races shouted. Their cultivation was much stronger, so they felt it more clearly. Even if they were a few billion miles away, they could still feel the terrifying danger. So, the battle in the Shen family village was very fierce. Rumble. In the sky, the thunder was even louder. Long Chen and the white-eyed wolf were about to be drowned by tens of thousands of ultimates. But then, Heavenly Lord Ji seemed to feel something and raised his eyebrows to look inside. He saw a young man in black and tattered clothes descending from the sky and landing in front of the Heavenly God Sword and the Long Chen siblings. It's you. Long Chen looked at the back of the young man and shouted. What are you doing? Let's go. The young man didn't look back. A terrifying energy rolled out, and the Heavenly God Sword and the Long Chen siblings immediately flew towards the Crazy One and the others. As for the snow python, it had already disappeared. Clearly, he had asked him to deliver the spatial divine item. If you guys work together, you should be able to take care of Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang. The young man yawned again and again. Even when he spoke, he seemed tired and powerless. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a scene that left everyone dumbfounded appeared. Several figures suddenly appeared behind the young man. These people who appeared out of thin air actually looked exactly the same as the young man. Weren't these 3,000 clones? 3,000 incarnations was a forbidden art of the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan. How could this person have it? But what was this? There was an even more shocking scene. With a snap of the young man's fingers, one ultimate profundity after another appeared. It was the ultimate profundity of the 6 supreme laws. How is this possible? Heavenly Lord Ji's eyes trembled. Not only did he control 3,000 incarnations, but he also possessed the ultimate profundities of 6 supreme laws of nature. The young man's expression was still languid, as if he could not wake up from his slumber. Suddenly, another finger snap was heard. Boom. A monstrous might erupted like a volcano. The will of the heavenly Tao. That was right. This was the will of the heavenly Tao. With the support of the will of the heavenly Tao, the power of the ultimate profundities instantly soared. 3,000 incarnations, ultimate profundities of the 6 supreme laws of nature, the will of the heavenly Tao. The strength and methods displayed by the young man were not inferior to Heavenly Lord Ji's at all. What a terrifying guy. Long Chen whispered and turned to the Heavenly God Sword. Bring us over to support him. The other party had already broken the agreement, so they naturally did not need to abide by it. The fully awakened Heavenly God Sword was several times faster than the moment of time. It swept up Long Chen and Long Qin and instantly landed beside Lunatic and the others. How could this be? Ryuko roared unwillingly. All the ultimate profundities crazily attacked Lunatic and the others. But at the same time, he turned around, pulled Jiang Yunshuang, and fled into the sky. On the other side, the young man and Heavenly Lord Ji had already clashed. All the ultimate profundities kept colliding, erupting with destructive power. Who are you? Heavenly Lord Ji was furious. Not to mention the 3,000 incarnations and 6 ultimate profundities. How could such an existence appear in a place like the Sky Cloud Realm? The young man kept yawning and said listlessly, "You are not qualified to know my name." Hearing this, Heavenly Lord Ji was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. The son of the monarch, the overlord of the world, actually said that he was not even qualified to know his name? At the same time, with the support of Long Chen, Long Qin, and the Heavenly God Sword, Lunatic and the others escaped death. However, the crisis was not over yet, because the battle between the young man and Heavenly Lord Ji was enough to threaten the barrier set up by the Angel Sword. The barrier must not be broken. Nothing must happen to the Shen family village. Whoosh! The group did not have time to heal their injuries. They turned around and rushed to the front of the barrier. The power of law surged out and turned into a huge barrier. Clang! White-eyed wolf, Yun Xiang, Li Zhongxing, Qiao Shui, and the old poison looked at each other and waved their hands. Sovereign weapons appeared one after another. Immediately, under the leadership of the heavenly god sword, these sovereign weapons soared into the sky and landed beside the angel sword, setting up a few more barriers. At this time, the Shun family village could be said to be protected by 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. At this time, White-Eyed Wolf activated the law of life to help everyone heal their injuries. This guy is too strong. Lunatic looked at the young man who was not weaker than Heavenly Lord Ji with shock in his eyes. I really didn't expect him to be so strong. Longchen nodded. Here, not only Lunatic and White-Eyed Wolf, Longchen and his sister were also very familiar with the young man. This was because the young man had already shown great strength in the ancient world. However, although they could see that the young man was extraordinary, they never expected him to have such heaven-defying means. Since he is so strong, why didn't he make a move after the divine kingdom descended? Li Zhongxing was puzzled. This person is not on our side. Lunatic shook his head. Not with us. Li Zhongxing was surprised. And, although we already knew him in the ancient world, no one knows his origin and identity. He is like a mystery. The most important thing is that every time he makes a move, it will exceed everyone's imagination. Lunatic said. So mysterious? Li Zhongxing, Old Poison, and Qiao Shui looked at each other. This person couldn't be here to play, right? Who is he? Why have I never heard of him before? In the distance, Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang's faces were also full of surprise. After coming to the Sky Cloud realm for so many years, they had already investigated the well-known powerhouses of the Sky Cloud realm, but there was no information about this person. He can't be the son of your aunt and the human emperor, right? Jiang Yunshuang suddenly asked. Ryuko's aunt was the princess of the divine kingdom. Impossible. I didn't sense the aura of the purple gold dragon blood on him. Ryuko shook his head. Your aunt's son might not be able to awaken the purple gold dragon blood, Jiang Yunshuang said. Ryuko's expression froze. These words were very reasonable. The inheritance of the bloodline power might not be a biological son or daughter, but it might be a descendant of another generation. For example, Qin Feiyang. Although he didn't know which generation Qin Feiyang was a descendant of the Qin clan, from the way Qin Feiyang usually addressed the princess of the divine kingdom, he must be a descendant of another generation. If that was the case, then wouldn't this young man in front of him be his cousin? No. Absolutely impossible. Ryuko clenched his fists. Even if it was true, he didn't want to believe it. How could a person who didn't have the purple gold dragon blood be more outstanding than him? The ultimate profundities of the 6 supreme laws were an unreachable dream to him. But how could he explain the 3,000 incarnations? Although his aunt betrayed the divine kingdom, she would never pass the 3,000 incarnations to an outsider. Rumble. Accompanied by a loud noise, the first confrontation between the two finally ended. The young man still looked like he hadn't woken up yet. Such a person can actually comprehend the ultimate profundities of the 6 supreme laws. Heavenly Lord Ji clenched his fists and felt very unbalanced. He shouted, "Who exactly are you? Why do you have 3,000 incarnations?" Frenzy and the others also looked at the young man, because this was also the question in their hearts. Apart from the purple gold dragon race, only the princess of the divine kingdom, Qin Feiyang, and the demon ancestor had 3,000 incarnations. The purple gold dragon race lived in the divine kingdom, and the young man hadn't even been to the divine kingdom. Naturally, he couldn't have gotten them from the divine kingdom. As for the princess of the divine kingdom, she had given the 3,000 incarnations to Empress Yu in the early years, and she had already lost this heaven-defying method. Not to mention the demon ancestor. He had always been in the Black Tortoise world, and had never interacted with the young man. Qin Feiyang certainly wouldn't give the 3,000 incarnations to an outsider. Both were impossible. Where did the young man's 3,000 incarnations come from? But the young man stood there as if he was about to fall asleep, and didn't want to talk to Heavenly Lord Ji at all. Heavenly Lord Ji frowned. What kind of attitude was this? But suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and looked at the young man in surprise and asked, "Are you my sister's child?" Frenzy and the White-Eyed Wolf were stunned. The child of the princess of the divine kingdom? It was impossible not to be impressed by the power of his image. Of course, they all knew that the child of the princess of the divine kingdom was Qin Batian. It had nothing to do with this young man. The young man was also stunned and looked at Heavenly Lord Ji. Suddenly, a trace of slyness flashed in his narrowed eyes. He nodded and said, "Yes, I am your sister's child, Qin Batian." What the hell? His words were truly shocking. Frenzy and the white-eyed wolf looked at each other. What was this guy trying to do? He actually pretended to be Qin Feiyang's ancestor. Qin Batian. Heavenly Lord Ji looked at the young man and shook his head. "You don't look like him at all." "Nonsense. It's not real at all. How can he look like him?" The white-eyed wolf mumbled. "As their child, do I have to look like them?" The young man said indifferently. "But you don't have the purple gold dragon blood," Heavenly Lord Ji said. "Purple gold dragon blood? I don't even care about this plaything." The young man pouted and his face was full of disdain. "How dare you? Since you're the descendant of the purple gold dragon, then you should protect the dignity of the purple gold dragon blood instead of looking down on it." Chapter 40:11. Protect the dignity of your purple gold dragon blood? You are thinking too much. The young man was disdainful and didn't dodge at all. He punched out lightly, but the seemingly light punch wasn't any weaker than Ji Tianjuan's. An intense battle ensued. Madman and the others finally saw the true strength of the young man. He was much stronger than them. He really is my aunt's child. Looking at the young man who was locked in battle with his father, Ryuko's face was particularly ferocious. How could a person who didn't even have purple gold dragon blood have such strength? Since he is your aunt's child, then the ancestor that Qin Feiyang spoke of must be him. It's really beyond imagination to be this strong. How did a low-level civilization that doesn't even have the inheritance of the ultimate mystery do it? Jiang Yunshuang's face was also full of disbelief. If the Sky Cloud realm had the inheritance of the ultimate mystery, then it could be explained that this person had integrated the inheritance. But, according to their investigation over the years, they couldn't find the inheritance of the ultimate mystery in the Sky Cloud realm. If he didn't integrate the inheritance, then he comprehended it himself? What a joke. In terms of age, as the child of the princess of the divine kingdom, he was younger than her and Ryuko. How could he comprehend the ultimate mystery of the 6 strongest laws? Unless this person opened the legendary gate of potential. Long Chen took a deep breath, retracted his gaze and transmitted his voice. "Qiner, you stay here with everyone to protect the Shen family village. Brother Mo, Brother Wolf, let's go kill Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang." "Okay. This time, we must deprive them of all their cultivation." White-eyed Wolf's eyes flashed with a cold light. "Ryuko, goddess, humph. Today, I will make you fall from the altar and never be able to rise again." However, just as the 3 were about to attack, "Brother Madman, Brother Wolf, look!" Li Feng exclaimed. The 2 were stunned and turned to look at Li Feng. They saw Li Feng looking at the sky with a face full of shock. Seeing this, the 2 of them hurriedly raised their heads and looked over. Their expressions were immediately shocked. Long Chen and the others were the same. At this moment, the rolling dark clouds in the sky gradually turned blood red. Countless bolts of lightning also turned blood red. A terrifying heavenly might was gradually awakening. What happened? Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang also noticed this scene, and their faces were full of surprise. Boom. Following closely, a terrifying aura exploded above the Shen family village. The group of people turned their heads to look at the sky above the village. Could it be Qin Feiyang? At this moment, all the villagers in the Shen family village raised their heads and looked at the sky in surprise. The life energy gathered from the entire western continent surged in the sky, like a vast ocean. It was countless times more spectacular than the life laws. Everyone in the village was greatly improved by this energy. For example, Shen Dazhuang's current cultivation had already soared to the initial Divine Lord realm. This was equivalent to him crossing an entire realm in this short period of half a month. Even Shen Dazhuang himself felt like he was dreaming at such a speed. As for the other people in the village, even the strongest person in the village, Shen Dazhuang, had broken through an entire realm. What about the others? In short, everyone had been reborn. One day in the future, the hundreds of people in the Shen family village would inevitably become famous in the Sky Cloud realm. Even in the future, they would become a force to protect the Sky Cloud realm. At this moment, there seemed to be a faint figure in the rolling life energy in the sky, but the life energy was too rich to see clearly. However, as the dark clouds and lightning in the sky all turned blood red, a huge vortex suddenly appeared above the village. All the life energy frantically rushed toward the vortex. In just a few breaths, the life energy in the sky disappeared, revealing a white figure. Qin Feiyang, Old Qin, Little Qin Zi, Qin Dage, Young Master. Frenzy and the others were wild with joy. That's right. This white figure was Qin Feiyang. The previous vortex was caused by him absorbing the life energy to reconstruct his body. Yes. He extracted the essence of the entire Western continent's plants just to reconstruct his body. At this moment, his skin was like a newborn baby, glowing with treasure light. His temperament had also become a little different from before, as if he had merged with heaven and earth. He was clearly standing in front of them, but he looked a little ethereal. Who is this? Looking at Qin Feiyang standing in the sky, many people in the village were surprised. But Shen Dazhuang was like a bolt from the blue. This face. Wasn't it the famous Qin Feiyang of the Sky Cloud realm? How could Qin Feiyang be in the sky above the village? He rubbed his eyes hard and looked up again. The young man in the sky didn't change at all. He was one of the legendary figures of the Sky Cloud realm. Junior Shen Dazhuang greets Senior Qin. With a quiver, Shen Dazhuang knelt on the ground with a face full of worship. Senior Qin? Shen Mulan and the others looked at Dazhuang in surprise. Grandpa Little Jia, yes, he is Qin Feiyang who has been guarding the Sky Cloud realm and protecting the world. Shen Dazhuang roared excitedly. He really didn't expect that one day he would be able to see this legendary figure in person. And it was in their Shen family village. Now, he finally understood why Madman Mo, Longqin, and Li Feng would appear in the Shen family village one after another. All of this was to protect Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang. Hearing Shen Dazhuang's roar, the people in the village couldn't help but tremble in body and mind. They couldn't believe it to the extreme. Now in the Sky Cloud realm, even if they hadn't seen Qin Feiyang, they would have heard of the name Qin Feiyang. Such an unattainable figure actually descended in the sky above their Shen family village? They were so shocked that they didn't associate Qin Feiyang with Gu Feng at all. Moreover, based on their understanding of this world, they already believed that Gu Feng was dead. Everyone quickly kneeled down. You can't be rude to Senior Qin, Shen Dazhuang said anxiously. The group of people came back to their senses and immediately knelt on the ground. But at this moment, an invisible force surged and blocked their legs. No matter what, they couldn't kneel down. And Shen Dazhuang, who had already knelt down, was also forcibly lifted up by that invisible force. Qin Feiyang slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were black and white, containing a heart-palpitating aura. This was the eye of life and death. But his eyes were extremely calm. I finally succeeded, he murmured and raised his head to look at the blood clouds in the sky with a trace of a smile on his face. This was his heavenly tribulation, the ultimate prodigy of the law of life and death. Moreover, it was also the heavenly tribulation of the law of death and the law of life, because once he comprehended the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, it was equivalent to comprehending the ultimate meaning of the law of death and the law of life at the same time. The power of the three ultimate meanings of the heavenly tribulation could be imagined. It was more terrifying than any other heavenly tribulation. But there wasn't the slightest bit of nervousness in his expression. Then, he slowly lowered his head and looked at the villagers. The smile on his face became wider. You don't have to be like this. I should be the one thanking you. Thank you. After saying that, he bowed to all the villagers. This caused the entire village to be dumbfounded. What did this mean? They couldn't understand it at all. Rebirth. Haha. I knew it. This kid would definitely do it. Black Tortoise Realm. Brat was also laughing loudly. Fire Dance, Wang Xiaojia, Pai Lupi Theta Wang, the Five-Clawed Golden Dragon, the Dark Guard, the Sword Emperor, and the others all had smiles on their faces. Of course, seeing Qin Feiyang's rebirth, the happiest people were the Mermaid Princess and Fire Lotus. The two of them grabbed each other's hands tightly and cried tears of joy. Boom! Accompanied by a heaven-shaking thunder, a blood-red lightning bolt descended from the sky. The heavenly might shook the world. The various Dominator divine weapons floating in the sky all felt a fatal crisis. Even the heavenly God sword and the angel sword, the two intermediate Dominator divine weapons, felt the same. Qin Feiyang, you can't go through the tribulation in the barrier. Come out or the barrier will break. The Divine King Ghost Throne shouted. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the Black Tortoise Realm returned to his forehead. The universe ring also disappeared in his sea of qi. Then he took a step forward and flew 90,000 miles. In an instant, he appeared outside the barrier, and stood above the various Dominator divine weapons. That's Big Brother Gu Feng's universe ring. Shen Xiaojia shouted. Gu Feng, Qin Feiyang murmured. This girl still didn't know that he was Gu Feng? Whoosh! He ignored it for now and activated his 3,000 clones. Senior brother White-Eyed Wolf Li Feng helped me go through the tribulation. His voice was like a bell that resounded for 10,000 miles. When the mad scientist, White-Eyed Wolf, and Li Feng heard it, they immediately activated their ultimate meanings. Li Zhongxing, Xiao Shui, and the old poisonous monster looked at each other and activated their ultimate meanings. Let's help him. After all, this is the heaven's tribulation of the law of life and death. Long Chen looked at Long Qin, Yin Xiang, and the masked Shura and smiled. Long Qin was a bit reluctant, but he didn't go against Long Chen's will. Boom! As the ultimate meanings appeared, the 3,000 clones behind Qin Feiyang immediately activated the purple gold dragon soul and the Eye of Heaven to copy the ultimate meanings of these people. He's Qin Feiyang. Heavenly Lord Ji looked up at Qin Feiyang and murmured to himself. The purple gold dragon soul, the Eye of Heaven, and now, he had comprehended the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death. This was too crazy. If he successfully went through the tribulation, even the divine kingdom would have to be careful in the future. What do you think of my descendant? He's good enough for you, right? The young man glanced at Qin Feiyang, and a trace of a smile could be seen on his lazy face. Then he looked at Heavenly Lord Ji and teased. Descendant? The white-eyed wolf was startled and looked at the young man strangely. Did this bastard pretend to be Qin Batian, just to take advantage of little Qinzi? Heavenly Lord Ji looked back at the young man. Suddenly, he stepped forward and dashed towards Qin Feiyang. I'm here. Don't think about these naive thoughts. The young man activated the moment of time, and instantly appeared in front of Heavenly Lord Ji. His terrifying power was released and forced Heavenly Lord Ji to step back. Then, all sorts of ultimate profound meanings were unleashed. He moved the battlefield further away step by step. He did this to prevent Heavenly Lord Ji from making trouble. On the other side, Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang clenched their hands and stared at Qin Feiyang with undisguised viciousness in their eyes. They couldn't let him pass the tribulation. They had to kill him even if they had to risk their lives. Chapter 40:12. Boom. The two suddenly soared into the sky and rushed toward Qin Feiyang like lightning. Now, Qin Feiyang was outside the barrier, so it was easier to kill him. You are courting death. The heavenly god sword roared. The sword tore through the sky and slashed toward the two. A mere mid-level dominator weapon dares to block my path. Ryuko's face was gloomy. His 3,000 incarnations activated their ultimate intent and charged toward the heavenly god sword. For ordinary people, a mid-level dominator weapon was like a god. But for Ryuko, who had 3,000 incarnations, it was no threat at all. Even a high-level dominator weapon would have to retreat in the face of 3,000 incarnations. This was the terror of 3,000 incarnations. The heavenly god sword panicked and quickly retreated. It could sacrifice for Long Chen, but it would never risk its life for Qin Feiyang. No, this was not risking its life. In front of 3,000 incarnations, this was courting death. Swish. But at this moment, Qin Feiyang did not retreat. Instead, he stepped forward and landed above Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang. What are you doing? Ryuko was stunned. But before he finished speaking, he understood Qin Feiyang's purpose. Because at this moment, the first heavenly tribulation was whistling toward them. Qin Feiyang took another step and instantly appeared below Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang. This way, Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang became his shield. Bastard! Ryuko roared. He was actually using him to help with the heavenly tribulation. It was too late to retreat now because the heavenly tribulation had already descended. The terrifying heavenly tribulation made the two feel as if they had fallen into the abyss of hell. Was this the heavenly tribulation of the ultimate intent of the law of life and death? It was many times more terrifying than the heavenly tribulation of the ultimate intent of the strongest law. He did not dare to hesitate. He hurriedly ordered his 3,000 incarnations to control the 6,000 ultimate intents and attack the heavenly tribulation. Boom! Following a deafening explosion, the 10 ultimate intents vanished on the spot. Not only Ryuko but Qin Feiyang Madman and the others were also dumbfounded. One had to know. Back when the God-slaying tablet underwent its tribulation, the third heavenly tribulation descended and only shattered 3 ultimate profundities. But now, just the first heavenly tribulation actually directly shattered 10 ultimate profundities. 10 ultimate profundities of ultimate laws were equivalent to 10 low-level sovereign divine weapons. 10 low-level dominator divine weapons were comparable to 1 mid-level dominator divine weapon. In other words, the power of the first heavenly tribulation was equivalent to the full power of the heavenly God sword and the angel sword. After all, both the Empyrean God sword and the angel sword were mid-level dominator divine weapons. Wasn't this power a little too terrifying? Compared to the God-slaying tablet's heavenly tribulation, it was several times stronger. Without the 3,000 incarnations and the eye of heaven, even Qin Feiyang would have died in the face of such a heavenly tribulation. It really made one's scalp tingle. Damn bastard, I'm going to kill you. Being used by Qin Feiyang, Ryuko and Madman were enraged. The remaining ultimate intents blasted toward Qin Feiyang. Don't think that you have the right to be arrogant just because I'm undergoing my tribulation. Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. He took a step forward and returned to the front of the 3,000 incarnations. His 3,000 incarnations were replicating the ultimate intents of Madman and the others. Although they hadn't replicated it yet, their aura was already enough to shake this world. Do you need help? Longchen asked with a smile. Let me try first. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. After saying that, the 3,000 incarnations behind him activated the ultimate intents of the karma law and the life and death law, exuding an aura that could destroy heaven and earth. Not bad. While the 3,000 incarnations were replicating, they could activate their own intents. The ultimate intents of the karma law and the ultimate intents of the life and death law were all methods that could compete with Ryuko. So Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang wanted to attack Qin Feiyang while he was undergoing his tribulation. But that was simply a pipe dream. The intents of the two sides crazily clashed together, causing a destructive aura to spread in all directions. The barrier set up by Long Chun and the others, as well as the heavenly god sword and the other sovereign weapons, was constantly being shattered. Not good. Madman's expression changed and he shouted, "If this continues, the Shen family village will be finished sooner or later." Qin Feiyang also raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "Ghost Divine King, immediately take the people of the Shen family village and leave the battlefield. You must protect them well." Understood. The throne of ghosts and deities responded. Then it swooped down and landed in the sky above the village. It picked up all the villagers and flew away without looking back. Qin Feiyang had been reborn, and the will he left behind had also been retracted. So now, everyone could enter the Shen family village. And with the people of the Shen family village leaving, there was no doubt that Qin Feiyang and the others could truly go all out. The sovereign weapons no longer cared about the Shen family village and returned to their master's side. As the last barrier shattered, the Shen family village instantly disappeared into the dust. High up in the sky, the collision of the intents of the laws had also determined the victor. Although Ryuko had lost 10 intents of the ultimate intents when facing the first tribulation, Jiang Yunshuang's 3 intents of the ultimate intents were strengthened by the god race's imprint, and their power was extremely terrifying. So in this confrontation, Qin Feiyang did not gain any advantage. But it was not a complete defeat. He could barely block it. Kacha. The second tribulation descended. Qin Feiyang looked up and frowned slightly. When the tribulation was brewing, he could indeed barely compete with Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang. But when the tribulation descended, it was a bit troublesome. Because while fighting with Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang, he also had to divide a portion of his intents of the laws to resist the tribulation. Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang also realized this and immediately seized this opportunity to activate their intents of the ultimate intents once again and madly attack Qin Feiyang. Damn it! I can't take it anymore. Madman roared angrily, and the power of the source of all evil turned into a blood-colored torrent that flooded the sky and attacked Jiang Yunshuang and Jiang Yunshuang. You really like to meddle in other people's business. Jiang Yunshuang was furious. The three intents of the ultimate intents that were attacking Qin Feiyang immediately turned in the air and blasted toward the blood-colored torrent. Boom! The blood-colored torrent continued to collapse, and the three intents of the ultimate intents were also dispersing. But Ryuko's 6,000 intents of the ultimate intents did not stop and continued to attack Qin Feiyang. It seems that you still need my help. Long Chen faintly smiled and stepped into the sky with the ultimate intents of the law of spacetime. He activated his domain of divinity and enveloped Ryuko's 6,000 intents of the ultimate intents. Although Qin Feiyang's 3,000 clones were currently copying his ultimate intents and causing his ultimate intents to be unable to be used to kill the enemy, this did not affect Long Chen much, because as long as he had his domain of divinity, it was fine. Many thanks. Qin Feiyang thanked him, and the ultimate intents of the law of karma and the law of life and death activated by the 3,000 clones behind him immediately turned into a wave that swept across the sky. Boom! The second heavenly tribulation blasted toward the 6,000 intents of the ultimate intents. In just an instant, 20 of the ultimate intents were shattered. Holy shit! This power has really multiplied. The pupils of White-Eyed Wolf and the others shrank. If they were in his place, they would only be waiting for death. Long Chen's pupils also shrank slightly, and he smiled without turning his head. It seems that I still need Brother Qin's help to pass the heavenly tribulation in the future. Qin Feiyang was taken aback and said with a smile, "Just give me the order." Although the heavenly tribulation of the ultimate intents was not comparable to the heavenly tribulation of the law of life and death, it was still difficult to pass without the 3,000 clones. Take the heavenly tribulation of the God-slaying tablet as an example. If Qin Feiyang had not helped back then, he would have been obliterated by the heavenly tribulation. Boom! The third heavenly tribulation appeared. After shattering the power of the source of all evil, Jiang Yunshuang once again charged towards Long Chen's domain of divinity. Treat me as if I don't exist. Lunatic also charged towards Jiang Yunshuang with two ultimate intents of the ultimate intents of the ultimate intents. His ultimate intents could not be used to kill the enemy now. However, it was not a big problem for him, because his fist was equivalent to the ultimate intents. The tug-of-war between the four began again, but now, it was obviously disadvantageous to Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang. Roar! The White-Eyed Wolf also activated his battle soul again, and began to deprive the two of their precepts and cultivation. The White-Eyed Wolf did not need to do it personally. He just needed to stand below and watch. And now, no one came to disturb him, because Heavenly Lord Ji had been forced to the distance by the young man, and could no longer be seen. Therefore, if nothing unexpected happened, Ryuko and Lunatic's precepts would be completely deprived by the White-Eyed Wolf sooner or later. Qin Feiyang looked at this scene, and a smile appeared on his face. The luckiest thing in his life was to have this group of companions. In short, no one was more reliable than these people in front of him, including Long Chen. As for Long Qin, to be honest, the moment he woke up, he was really surprised to see Long Qin and the White-Eyed Wolf standing together in life and death. Although this had a lot to do with Long Chen, with Long Qin's character, it was really rare to see such a performance. The third heavenly tribulation fell. 30 profundities of the laws shattered in response. The power of this attack had indeed increased exponentially. The heavenly tribulation of the life and death laws was ridiculously powerful. When the 10th heavenly tribulation came, wouldn't it require 100 precepts to contend with it? 100 precepts was the power of a high-grade sovereign weapon, and one had to know there were still 89 heavenly tribulations. The power of the last heavenly tribulation was the sum of the previous 98 heavenly tribulations. The first heavenly tribulation requires 10 precepts. The second heavenly tribulation requires 20 precepts. When the 98th heavenly tribulation comes, it will require 980 precepts. What the fuck, that's amazing. The white-eyed wolf murmured. What is this? Calculate the total of 98 heavenly tribulations. Longqin said. The total of 98 heavenly tribulations. How does this count? The white-eyed wolf was stunned. Are you a pig? The first heavenly tribulation requires 10 precepts, right? The second heavenly tribulation requires 20 precepts, right? The sum is added one by one like this. I really don't understand why Fire Dance likes you. Longqin shook his head. Who are you looking down on? I was just shocked and my brain short-circuited. The white-eyed wolf snorted coldly and began to count with his fingers. 1, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Looking at this scene, the corner of Longqin's mouth twitched. Was this guy here to be funny? He actually started to count. After all, he was someone who had mastered the precepts of the 3 strongest precepts. Could he not be so childish? Chapter 40:13. There's no need to count your fingers. The power of the 99th heavenly tribulation is comparable to 48,510 ultimate mysteries. Yin Xiang said. What? That many? The white-eyed wolf was stunned. Not to mention the white-eyed wolf, Longqin, Master Jura, Li Zhongxing, and the others could not help but feel their scalps go numb when they heard this number. Now they finally understood why no one in this world had mastered the ultimate mysteries of the law of life and death. Even if one could comprehend the law of life and death and ultimate mysteries, no one could successfully pass this heavenly tribulation. Did you calculate wrongly? The white-eyed wolf came back to his senses and looked at Yin Xiang. This number was simply unacceptable to them. You do it yourself. The 1st to 10th heavenly tribulation is a total of 550 heavenly tribulations. The 11th to 20th heavenly tribulation is a total of 1,550 heavenly tribulations. Because the 10th heavenly tribulation requires 110 ultimate mysteries, and the 12th heavenly tribulation requires 20 ultimate mysteries. In total, there are 1,550 heavenly tribulations. From the 21st to the 30th heavenly tribulation, there are a total of 2,550 heavenly tribulations. The 81st to 90th heavenly tribulation is a total of 8,550 heavenly tribulations. As for the 90th to the 98th heavenly tribulation, there are 7,560 heavenly tribulations. Yin Xiang was very patient. Why are there so few heavenly tribulations from the 90th to the 98th heavenly tribulation? The white-eyed wolf was stunned. Of course there are fewer heavenly tribulations, because the power of the 98th heavenly tribulation is the sum of all the heavenly tribulations before it. It can only be calculated up to the 98th heavenly tribulation. Yin Xiang explained. This arithmetic problem is still a little brain-intensive. The white-eyed wolf smiled embarrassedly and then said in shock, but 48,000 ultimate mysteries is really a terrifying number. No. If all of them are calculated, Qin Feiyang's tribulation this time requires over 97,000 ultimate profundities of supreme laws. Yin Xiang shook his head. Why did it double again? The white-eyed wolf was stunned. It's simple. From the 1st heavenly tribulation to the 98th heavenly tribulation, it already requires over 48,000 ultimate mysteries. Just the power of the 99th heavenly tribulation alone requires over 48,000 ultimate mysteries. 48,500 for 2. Isn't that more than 97,000? Yin Xiang said. 97,000? Is little Qin Zi's copy of the ultimate meaning enough? The white-eyed wolf's eyes trembled. Transcending the tribulation was also extremely difficult. If it wasn't difficult, would the law of life and death be so powerful? As for whether it's enough or not, To be honest, it's still far from enough. Yin Ziang shook his head. He himself had the ultimate profundities of 4 supreme laws. The white-eyed wolf had 4 ultimate mysteries. Long Qin had 3 ultimate mysteries. Li Feng had an ultimate profound. The masked Azura only had a single ultimate truth. The lunatic had 2 ultimate truths. Long Chen had 1 ultimate truth. Li Zhongxing and the other 2 had 3 ultimate truths. Everyone had a total of 19 ultimate truths. All 19 ultimate truths had been copied by the 3,000 incarnations, but there were only 57,000 of them. That meant there were still 40,000 ultimate truths missing. Therefore, the 3,000 incarnations had to copy them again. Even Yin Ziang couldn't help but be shocked when he calculated this number himself. Who could survive this? The power of the supreme laws or the sovereign divine weapon was almost fixed at each stage of the tribulation. For example, although there was a slight difference in the first 5 heavenly tribulations, their power would never exceed the 4 ultimate truths. But the power of the heavenly tribulation of the law of life and death would increase with each heavenly tribulation. This kind of heavenly tribulation could only be successfully passed by the 3,000 incarnations and the eye of heaven. Otherwise, unless it was like the divine kingdom, which had enough sovereign divine weapons and enough experts who had mastered the ultimate profundities of the supreme laws. However, speaking of which, did the divine kingdom really have so many experts who had mastered the ultimate profundities of the supreme laws? Yin Ziang was doubtful. Although the divine kingdom was powerful, it wasn't easy to have tens of thousands of experts who had mastered the ultimate profundities of the supreme laws. If there weren't, then it was easy to say. With Qin Feiyang's 3,000 incarnations and the eye of heaven, plus everyone working together, they basically had the ability to fight against the divine kingdom. But if there were so many experts, the situation in the Sky Cloud realm would still be unchangeable. There was another point that couldn't be ignored. That was the Purple Gold Divine Dragon Clan and the God Clan. The mark of the God Clan couldn't be treated with standards. And the Purple Gold Divine Dragon Clan also had 3,000 incarnations. Although they didn't have the Eye of Heaven, they had the advantage in numbers. As far as he knew, there were 3 people in the Purple Gold Divine Dragon Clan who had 3,000 incarnations. King Heavenly Lord Ji and Ryuko. And now, he had to count the will of the heavenly path. For example, Heavenly Lord Ji had mastered the ultimate profundities of the 6 supreme laws and integrated with the will of the heavenly path. His strength naturally couldn't be treated with ordinary standards. If Heavenly Lord Ji was so strong, then the king must be even stronger. If he really had to go to war with the divine kingdom. Thinking of this, Yin Ziang couldn't help but turn his head and look in the direction of the battle between the young man and Heavenly Lord Ji. He had to ask this young man for help, because this young man had also integrated with the will of the heavenly path. When little Qinzi succeeds in transcending the tribulation, will immediately charge into the divine kingdom. The white-eyed wolf's voice suddenly rang out. No. I've thought about it. Our strength isn't enough. Yin Ziang quivered and hurriedly looked at the white-eyed wolf. Wait. Behind the king and the others was the ruler of the divine kingdom. Then they couldn't charge into the divine kingdom. Because once they charged into the divine kingdom, it would be tantamount to sending a lamb to the tiger's mouth. What are you afraid of? Let's just do it. The white-eyed wolf snickered. Yin Ziang smiled bitterly when he heard this. He was indeed a fearless person. However, this was also good. At least they could let the divine kingdom see their courage. The Sky Cloud realm would not allow anyone to invade them. In the sky, Qin Feiyang had successfully transcended the 10th tribulation. Sure enough, as Yin Ziang had calculated, the 10th tribulation consumed a total of 500 and 500 law profound meanings. Frenzy 2 people and Dragon Sun 2 people's battle also caused the sky to turn dark. But in comparison, Ryuko duo was even more anxious. Because the Frenzy and Long Chun intended to restrain them, otherwise they would disturb Qin Feiyang's tribulation. But Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang had to deal with the Frenzy duo while looking for an opportunity to kill Qin Feiyang. At the same time, they also had to face the pressure of being deprived of their cultivation and laws by the white-eyed wolf. This almost made them collapse. Not good. Suddenly, Jiang Yunshuang's face changed. She felt that she could no longer control her cultivation and laws. She would never forget this feeling for the rest of her life. It was the precursor of being deprived. Ryuko also had the same feeling. Let's go. Anyway, he still needs a lot of time to transcend the tribulation. Let's go back to the Divine Kingdom to find support. Ryuko secretly said. The two decisively turned around, activated Moment of Time, and left without looking back. Where do you think you're going? The white-eyed wolf roared. Moment of Time was activated, and he took a step forward. Because he had already seen that the two were afraid of retreating, he had been paying attention. Get lost. The two roared and attacked with all their strength. The white-eyed wolf was about to use its ultimate meaning to intercept the two, but suddenly remembered that Qin Feiyang's 3,000 incarnations were still replicating, so he immediately dodged to the side. The two did not continue to kill the white-eyed wolf and quickly fled. Shua. But at this moment, three figures suddenly descended from the void. It was two men and a woman. The woman looked to be in her 30s. She wore a snow-white long dress, and her hair was tied up high, looking extremely luxurious. There was a clear mark of the god race between her eyebrows. Of the two men, one was the monarch. The other was in his 40s. He wore a golden robe with a 5-clawed golden dragon engraved on it. There was no mark of the god race between his eyebrows. Obviously, he was not from the god race. However, one could see the terrifying aura of an emperor behind him. As soon as the three of them appeared, the monarch's palm fell, and the white-eyed wolf's war soul was shattered on the spot. Puff! As he spat out a mouthful of blood, the white-eyed wolf quickly retreated to the side of Frenzy and Long Chun. Long Qin and the others also hurriedly flew into the sky and joined Frenzy and the other two. Their faces were gloomy to the extreme. The monarch actually came personally. Ryuko noticed the movement behind him. He turned around and was immediately overjoyed. Grandfather. Following closely, he turned around and rushed to the monarch's side. Lord Divine King, Lord Supreme. Jiang Yunshuang was also overjoyed. Divine King. Lord Supreme? Frenzy and the others looked at the Divine King of the God race and Lord Supreme of the human race, and their pupils constricted. The aura emitted by this man and woman was not inferior to the monarch at all. Oh no. Qin Feiyang's face also darkened. With the monarch here, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens to successfully pass the tribulation. Ryuko pointed at Qin Feiyang behind the white-eyed wolf and the others and roared with hatred. Grandfather, he has already comprehended the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, and is undergoing the tribulation. Quickly kill him. He really comprehended it. The monarch and the other two looked at each other. A trace of shock suddenly crawled up their calm faces as they looked up at Qin Feiyang. Monarch, what do you mean by this? Aren't you afraid of the blood oath? Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. I'm afraid that his blood oath has already been broken. Frenzy said without turning his head. What? Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled. Frenzy said, before you were reborn, his son, Heavenly Lord Ji, had already arrived in our sky cloud realm. The one who fought with that young man? Qin Feiyang asked. At the beginning of the tribulation, Heavenly Lord Ji wanted to attack him, but he was stopped and forced away by the young man. However, because he was undergoing the tribulation, he didn't ask about these things for the time being. That's right. Heavenly Lord Ji has mastered the ultimate meaning of the 6 strongest laws, and has also merged with the will of the heavenly Tao. We couldn't stop him even if we worked together. If that young man appeared, we would have already died in their hands. And before the battle, Heavenly Lord Ji said that the monarch was in the Divine Kingdom to break the blood oath. Now that he has personally come to the Sky Cloud realm, this means that the blood oath must have been broken, Frenzy said. Qin Feiyang's heart was surging with waves of shock. How strong did one need to be able to break the blood oath? Since the monarch had broken the blood oath in advance, then he must be here to kill him. It seemed that comprehending the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death had completely aroused the killing intent of the Divine Kingdom. Chapter 40:14. During the conversation, Qin Feiyang had already passed a few more heavenly tribulations. At this moment, The 3,000 clones had finally replicated all the ultimate mysteries of the mad scientist and the others. 57,000 ultimate mysteries floated in the air, exuding an aura that could destroy the world. The Divine King and the human race Supreme Being couldn't help but be shocked when they saw this scene. This was the Eye of Heaven? It was indeed ridiculously strong. Coupled with the 3,000 clones, it was undoubtedly like adding wings to a tiger. Where's your father? The Divine King turned to look at Ryuko and asked. He was restrained by Qin Batian. Ryuko said in a deep voice. Qin Batian? The Divine King was stunned. The monarch and the human race Supreme Being were also puzzled. Ryuko said, This Qin Batian is my aunt's child. What? The monarch's eyes trembled. The child of the Divine Kingdom's princess, his grandson. Last time, he asked Qin Feiyang, but Qin Feiyang didn't say anything. Only now did he know that his grandson was Qin Batian. Wait. The human race Supreme Being seemed to have suddenly thought of something and said in surprise, Since he's your aunt's child, he's also your cousin. He's younger than you. How could he have the ability to restrain your father? Hearing this, Ryuko suddenly felt that the human race Supreme Being was humiliating him. Of course, the human race Supreme Being didn't mean to humiliate him at all. It was he who felt this way. He was younger than him, but his strength was many times stronger than him. Of course he felt uncomfortable. Speak. The monarch frowned. Ryuko quivered and hurriedly looked at the monarch and said, Grandpa, not only does he have 3,000 clones, but he also grasps the ultimate mysteries of the 6 strongest laws and has integrated the will of the heavenly Tao. What? The ultimate mysteries of the 6 strongest laws? The monarch's eyes trembled. This was his grandson? The Divine King and the human race Supreme Being were also in disbelief. A place like the Sky Cloud Realm could actually produce such a powerhouse? It was truly inconceivable. The Divine King sighed. The bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragon race is indeed extraordinary. No, this Qin Batian doesn't have the bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragon. Ryuko said. The Divine King was stunned. He didn't even have the bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragon. Yet he still possessed such talent? To hell with it. The monarch was unable to remain calm. As he thought about the young man, he looked at Qin Feiyang. He had always looked down on humans. They believed that humans were inherently inferior to the purple gold divine dragons. It was also because of this that he had set the clan's rules, forbidding the purple gold divine dragons from marrying humans. This was because the union between humans and purple gold divine dragons was tantamount to blasphemy against the bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragons. So back then, when he discovered that his own daughter was actually with the human emperor of the Sky Cloud Realm, he was extremely angry and personally came to the Sky Cloud Realm. According to the Emperor of Feathers and others, the beast god of the Sky Cloud Sea was killed by the monarch at that time. However, he never expected that. After all these years, the descendants of his daughter in the Sky Cloud Realm were each more outstanding than the other. Qin Feiyang, Qin Batian. One had comprehended the ultimate mysteries of the law of life and death, and the other had comprehended the ultimate mysteries of the 6 strongest laws. Such talent and such achievements were far beyond the descendants of the Divine Kingdom's purple gold divine dragon race. At this moment, the monarch's mind was in a mess. He felt that the principles he had once adhered to had now become a joke. Boom. In the distance, the battle between Heavenly Lord Ji and the young man had already reached its climax. However, no matter how dangerous and intense the battle was, the young man still looked like he hadn't woken up yet. Sensing the fluctuations of the battle between the two, the monarch and the other two also confirmed Ryuko's words. This Qin Batian had indeed mastered the ultimate mysteries of the 6 strongest laws. Crack! Another heavenly tribulation descended. 57,000 ultimate mysteries hovered in the sky, emitting a terrifying aura. It was already enough to help Qin Feiyang block the first 98 heavenly tribulations. Because the 98 heavenly tribulations required a total of more than 40,000 ultimate mysteries. When the 99th heavenly tribulation descended, Qin Feiyang would have to replicate it again. If the monarch and the other two didn't come, he was confident that he could successfully pass the heavenly tribulation. But now, He was very nervous. "You are Madman Mo?" Suddenly, the Divine King looked at the madman standing in front of him. Because the madman was too eye-catching now, his 10,000 feet body emitted an explosive aura. "Yes." The madman nodded and laughed. "That's me. Who the hell are you?" "Madman, you are too presumptuous. This is the Divine King of the God race." Jiang Yunshuang stood beside the Divine King, his eyes filled with anger. How dare he speak so rudely to the Divine King? The Divine King of the God race. Everyone's pupils shrank. The Divine King of the God race must be the ruler of the God race. No wonder even Ryuko had to bow respectfully when he saw him. What about this one? Longchen looked at the supreme being of the human race. This is the supreme being of the human race of the Divine Kingdom. Ryuko smiled proudly. Supreme being of the human race. The madman and the others tensed up. A monarch, a divine king, and a supreme being. These were the three giants of the Divine Kingdom. Their identities and statuses were even higher than Divine Lord Ji's. Their strength was probably above Divine Lord Ji's. Putting everything else aside, the three of them had definitely grasped the ultimate mysteries of the six strongest laws, and merged with the will of the heavenly Tao. The pressure in everyone's hearts instantly multiplied. I've heard a lot about the source of all evil, but this is the first time I've seen it with my own eyes. Show it to me, let me experience it. The Divine King took a step forward and stood in the sky with a hint of provocation in his cold eyes. The madman stared at the Divine King, his eyes flashing red. Seeing this, Longchen thought, "Don't be impulsive. You might not be her match." The madman was silent for a while and laughed. "Even if I'm not her match, do we have a choice now? At most, we will die here." Boom. As his voice fell, he raised his mountain-like arm and slapped at the Divine King, roaring, "If I win, you will immediately return to the Divine Kingdom. As long as you have the ability." The Divine King spoke, and the mark of the God race between his eyebrows erupted with a sacred light. Clang. Immediately after, the power of time surged out, and the ultimate mysteries appeared. The Divine King grabbed the Time Divine Sword and slashed at the madman's giant hand. "Lord Divine King, be careful. The power of the source of all evil can be attached to his body," Jiang Yunshuang reminded. But the Divine King didn't have any reaction, nor did he stop. The madman laughed and slapped down. Accompanied by a loud clang, the Time Divine Sword shattered on the spot, but a wound was left on his palm. But this injury couldn't even be considered a flesh wound to him. The giant hand slammed down. The Divine King activated the momentary time, and instantly retreated from the range of the giant hand. Boom. The madman's palm hit the ground and a loud explosion occurred. A giant palm print appeared on the ground. "Don't dodge if you have the guts." The madman's aura was like a rainbow as he charged forward. His fist was surrounded by blood-red flames. It was the power of the source of all evil. The Divine King turned a deaf ear to the madman's clamor. The Time Divine Sword appeared once more, and the terrifying sharpness seemed to be able to sever the river of time. With a loud bang, the sword tip collided with the madman's fist, and a world-destroying might erupted. Drops of blood dripped down from the madman's fist. Kacha. But at the next moment, the divine sword of time shattered. The madman roared as his fist shattered the sky. Just as the Divine King was about to be hit, the Divine King activated the momentary time again and retreated. "Why are you running? The dignified Divine King of the God race doesn't dare to fight with a junior like me." The madman laughed. The law of destruction and the law of time, two ultimate mysteries appeared. The power of the source of all evil surged out and merged with the ultimate mysteries. Boom. A monstrous might suddenly erupted. Then the madman waved his hand, and the two ultimate mysteries charged toward the Divine King. At the same time, he raised his fist once more, and an unparalleled power erupted as he charged toward the Divine King. The power of the source of all evil can indeed increase the power of the body and the laws at the same time. It can't be underestimated. The human race sovereign muttered. For an existence of his level to say such a thing, it was enough to show the madman's strength. The madman went berserk. The Divine King didn't retreat. He used his ultimate mysteries to deal with the madman and didn't clash head-on. It seemed that the madman had the upper hand, But Ryuko, the white-eyed wolf, and the others weren't happy at all. Instead, they were worried, because the Divine King was too calm and composed. Rather than saying that he was fighting the madman, it was more like he was testing the madman's strength. Qin Feiyang was also paying attention to the battlefield. With the help of the 3,000 clones, he didn't need to worry about it for the time being. But at the same time, he was also deeply worried. Several dozen people passed by. Although the madman was incomparably valiant, the Divine King wasn't injured at all. Instead, the madman's fists and arms were left with wounds. How long are you going to hide? The madman roared. As you wish. The Divine King stepped forward and thrust out a palm, finally facing the madman head-on. The madman's expression froze. He actually intended to fight him head-on, bare-chested? Didn't he know that the strength of his body had already surpassed the ultimate mysteries of the strongest laws? What a naive person. Boom. The madman punched out, and the power of the source of all evil roared out in all directions like a tide. The Divine King was only a little over 1.7 meters tall. Facing the madman's massive body, he was like an ant facing an elephant. But the moment their fists collided, a terrifying power surged out from the Divine King's palm. The madman immediately sensed this power, and a trace of disbelief appeared on his face. The next moment, a terrifying aura surged out from the two of them. The two of them were in a deadlock in the air, and their powers constantly clashed. Boom. Several seconds later, the two of them grunted at the same time and retreated. What? Qin Feiyang and the others also looked at this scene in shock. The Divine King's physical strength and strength were also so terrifying? This can't be real. They were already familiar with the power of the god race's mark. Whether it was Jiang Yunshuang, Jiang Chun, or Jiang Xing, they could only increase the power of their laws. They couldn't increase the strength of their bodies. What was going on? Chapter 40:15. There was dead silence. Madman stabilized his footsteps and looked at the Divine King in disbelief. His feeling was the most vivid. The power that the Divine King erupted with was no weaker than his. But where did this power come from? The mark of the god race didn't seem to have the effect of strengthening the body and strength. Shua. The Divine King attacked again, and it was still a light palm. This daddy doesn't believe this. Madman's eyes turned cold. The power of all evil surged as he threw out a punch. This time, the madman could clearly see a sacred power erupting from the God King's palm as well. This was the aura of the mark of the god race. Boom. The fist and palm collided once again. The power of all evil and the power of the god race opposed each other, and finally erupted with an aura that could destroy heaven and earth. The two retreated again, their faces somewhat pale. Obviously, these two powers were evenly matched. Madman said in disbelief. Why is your mark different from Jiang Yunshuang's? Because this sovereign is the Divine King. Their marks were all bestowed by this sovereign, so naturally they can't be compared. The Divine King said indifferently. There was a trace of arrogance between his brows. The mark of the god race was bestowed by her. Madman murmured. Could this principle be the same as the blood demon race? The blood demon race with the mark could borrow the power of the evil moon and evil sun? Actually, we can also be considered old enemies. You represent evil, while this sovereign represents light and holiness. Our encounter was destined. However, evil will never be able to defeat light. As the Divine King finished speaking, the ultimate meaning of the law of time appeared once again, erupting with a terrifying will. It was as if the heavenly Tao had descended, causing all things to tremble. Will of the heavenly Tao. Madman's expression changed. Not bad. Will of the heavenly Tao. The mark of the god race, plus the will of the heavenly Tao, with your two ultimate meanings, you don't even have the qualifications to be this sovereign's opponent. The Divine King waved his hand, and the time god sword immediately tore through the sky, slashing towards Madman. Is that so? Madman smiled savagely. The law of thunder, the law of slaughter, the law of space-time, and the law of destruction were all activated at the same time. He must have been scared silly. Even ultimate laws are useless, let alone ordinary ultimate laws. Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang looked at each other with mocking expressions. A loser like you has the right to mock me? The madman looked at Ryuko and Madman with disdain. His 4 ultimates immediately attacked the time god sword. Ryuko clenched his fists. As the saying goes, when you hit someone, don't hit their face, and when you scold someone, don't expose their shortcomings. But this bastard actually called them losers in front of everyone. Wasn't this clearly embarrassing them? This bastard must die. Otherwise, they would have to bear the name of a defeated opponent for the rest of their lives. In the blink of an eye, the 4 ultimates collided with the time god sword. The divine sword of time, which possessed the will of the heavenly Tao, could be described as invincible. Madman's 4 ultimate profundities were shattered on the spot, unable to resist at all. Will of the heavenly Tao. Even if the heavenly Tao descends, I'm not afraid. The madman roared, and the power of the source of all evil surged out as he punched the time god's sword. Boom. A destructive aura roared in all directions. The madman's arm was torn open and blood flowed out. But he didn't retreat. He raised his other arm, and threw another punch at the time sword. This arm also shattered on the spot, and blood and flesh flew everywhere. The madman will not succumb to a will. Shatter for me. The madman had simply reached the point of madness. He smashed his head against the time god sword, and blood immediately flowed out. Finally, with a cracking sound, the time god sword that possessed the will of the heavenly Tao shattered into pieces and dissipated between heaven and earth. And at this moment, the madman had already become a man of blood. But the courage he displayed shocked the 3 giants of the divine kingdom. Although there were countless geniuses in the divine kingdom, no one could compare to this person in terms of courage and insight. If such a person was given enough time, he would definitely become a terrifying existence in the future. Senior brother, quickly retreat, Qin Feiyang said anxiously. There's no way out. The madman shook his head. They originally thought that with the arrival of the youth and the restraint of Heavenly Lord Ji, they would be able to escape danger. But who would have thought? Before they could rejoice, the 3 giants of the divine kingdom personally arrived. This was even more terrifying than the arrival of Heavenly Lord Ji. Did the heavens really want them to die? I won't accept this. The madman roared, and a wave of death energy erupted like a volcano. In an instant, this place seemed to have become a purgatory. Boom. Accompanied by a loud explosion, a huge object appeared in the sky. It was as if hell had appeared, and it emitted a terrifying aura. 18 levels of hell. The white-eyed wolf and the others were overjoyed. They never thought that the madman would actually comprehend the ultimate meaning of the law of death at this time. Crack. Boom. What followed was a sky full of tribulation clouds. Bolts of blood-red lightning roared in the sky like giant pythons. Oh no. Long Chen's face changed. It was supposed to be a good thing, but under the current situation, it had undoubtedly become one disaster after another, because the madman was going to go through the tribulation. Although the heavenly tribulation of the law of death wasn't comparable to the heavenly tribulation of the law of life and death, it still required everyone to do their best and the help of the 3,000 incarnations. But now, Qin Feiyang controlled the 3,000 incarnations. And Qin Feiyang also had to face the heavenly tribulation himself. How could he divert his attention to help the madman? Even if Qin Feiyang could divert his attention to help the madman, the 3 giants of the divine kingdom wouldn't allow it. Because both Qin Feiyang and the madman had shown enough potential to threaten the divine kingdom. The 3 giants would definitely take this opportunity to strangle them in the cradle. They're really talented. Even I don't want to kill them. The king looked at the madman, then looked at Qin Feiyang, and sighed with emotion. The human race's sovereign and the divine king also had a trace of admiration in their eyes. But admiration was one thing. The threat still had to be eliminated. Otherwise, if they were allowed to grow like this, the divine kingdom would definitely suffer a great disaster in the future. Boom. Accompanied by a terrifying aura, 3,000 incarnations immediately appeared in the void behind the king. It seems that no matter what, we can't escape death today. Long Chen smiled bitterly. What's there to fear about death? I only hate that I can't drag a few of them down with me. The white-eyed wolf clenched his fists. Although they couldn't defeat the king and the other 2, They could risk their lives to kill Ryuko and Jiang Yunshuang. But so what if they killed the two? Both of them left their souls in the Divine Kingdom. Not long after killing them, they could be reborn. Blame us for being too naive. We shouldn't have believed their agreement and blood oath. Yunxiang sighed. The Divine Kingdom. You don't even have the slightest spirit of the contract. You are really unworthy of being the overlord of the Divine Kingdom. No. You are clowns, disgusting. Longchen glared at the king and the other two. If the older generation of the Divine Kingdom didn't intervene, the younger generation of the Divine Kingdom wouldn't be able to stop Qin Feiyang and the madman from crossing the tribulation. Not to mention, they were forced into such a desperate situation. Haha, you can't win, so you start to curse? I really admire you. But now all you can do is talk. This is the gap between your sky cloud realm and our Divine Kingdom. Do you understand now? No matter how you struggle, in the end, you will die like an ant without a burial place. Ryuko laughed wildly. Shut up. The one who has the least right to speak here is you. How many times have you come to the sky cloud realm? Count it yourself. Which time didn't you run away like a stray dog? Li Feng shouted angrily. Without the king and the other two, you dare to be so arrogant? Don't talk nonsense with him. He is a clown. Talking to him is a disgrace. The white-eyed wolf sneered. You still dare to be arrogant with me? Wait, I won't let you die so easily. I will let you taste a life worse than death. Ryuko stared at Li Feng and the white-eyed wolf, his eyes full of resentment. Boom. At this moment, the madman's tribulation descended. But with his current state, he probably couldn't even withstand the first tribulation, because now his injuries were too serious. Senior brother, come to me. Let's cross the tribulation together. Qin Feiyang shouted. The madman took a step forward, his body quickly shrank, returning to his original state and landing beside Qin Feiyang. The tribulation also followed. The three ultimate profound meanings were annihilated on the spot. Sure enough, the tribulation of the strongest law was similar to the tribulation of the sovereign divine weapon. However, although there was Qin Feiyang's help, everyone's situation was precarious at this moment. The king took a deep breath, looked at Qin Feiyang and said, I will ask you one last time. Will you follow me to the Divine Kingdom? And I can let the madman, the golden-winged wolf king, also enter the Divine Kingdom. What? Ryuko's eyes trembled. Grandpa still hasn't given up on persuading these people to join the Divine Kingdom? If Qin Feiyang really agreed, with the strength and potential of Qin Feiyang, the madman and the white-eyed wolf, their status in the Divine Kingdom would definitely be above him. No. This kind of thing is absolutely not allowed to happen. Qin Feiyang looked at the king, and was silent for a while. His eyes gradually flashed with a firm light, and said, As long as you promise me that you will never invade the Sky Cloud realm again, I can go to the Divine Kingdom with you. What if I don't agree? The king asked. Then I will accompany the destruction of the Sky Cloud realm. Qin Feiyang's voice was sonorous and powerful. No regrets? The king said. No regrets. Qin Feiyang said word by word. What a good no regrets. The king took a deep breath, and his eyes suddenly became sharp, and said, Then you will be destroyed. As his voice fell, the 3,000 incarnations behind him activated their ultimate mysteries, which were also the ultimate mysteries of the 6 strongest laws. Each ultimate mysteries contained the will of the heavens, exuding a destructive aura. Swish. At the same time, Longchen, the white-eyed wolf, Yunxiang, the master Jura, and Li Zhongxing, the 3 of them, unanimously stood in front of the madman and Qin Feiyang. They didn't say a single word, but their actions already represented their determination. Sharing honor and disgrace, sharing life and death. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.